Chapter 27:35. With him here to protect them, everything would be fine. It was not a big deal. However, the war was imminent. The army was about to sweep this battlefield. They would not let go of even a needle. They would probably dig 3 feet into the ground to find the rebellious emperor. Not to mention that the allied forces would also fight against the allied forces of the heavenly race. Under such circumstances, it was too dangerous to stay here. Qianqian, the war is imminent. If you stay here, you will be in danger. I am worried. Yi Shiwen could not help but say. That's right. Sister-in-law, it is too dangerous here. If this place is really important, you can still come back to practice after the war is over. The Flame Lord also tried to persuade her. I know you are doing this for my own good. However, don't worry, my real place of practice is not here. Yi Qianqian said. This place is related to a secret of the Death Lord. However, no one here is an outsider, so I will not hide it. In fact, the Death Lord once obtained a mysterious inheritance and entered a place called the Death Realm. He once obtained a supreme inheritance, and later his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. However, the entrance to the Death Realm is very difficult to find. According to the inheritance of the Death Lord guessed that the Death Realm may be located in an extremely secret dimension. It is not something that can be reached by ordinary means. I did not have much hope because at that time, when the Death Lord was still controlling my body, I went back. However, the entrance to the world of death has already collapsed. According to my speculation, the entrance to the world of death might not be fixed. It might randomly appear in the heavens and realms. This is a rare opportunity. Even when the Lord of Death was extremely powerful, he didn't find a second entrance. Therefore, this entrance is a rare opportunity for me. It might be related to my great fortune. I don't want to miss it. Yi Shiwen looked at Yi Qianqian and asked, You mean, you can enter the Death Realm through this entrance? I tried just now. As soon as I got close to it, I was rejected. Yi Shiwen could feel a huge repulsive force coming from that place. He was afraid that he would meet with misfortune if he were to forcibly break into that place. Moreover, he didn't know what was behind that crack. So, he wasn't willing to take the risk. That's because the death rain repels everything in the outside world. There's only the power of death inside. You don't cultivate this path, so you'll naturally be repelled by the death rain. However, to me, it's a holy land for cultivation. This is just the entrance. Even if the world outside falls apart, it won't affect me much. Yi Qianqian said, I'm here now, but I just want to absorb the rich death energy here. Obviously, I've been here for a long time. If the battle reaches here, I'll directly enter the death rain. You don't have to worry. What kind of place is this death zone? Why have I never heard of it? Yi Shiwen asked. What is this place? Actually, I don't know either. Yi Qianqian shook her head. Back then, it was discovered by the Lord of Death, so it was named the Death Rain. It's filled with the power of death. Back then, the Lord of Death didn't venture too deep into it, so he doesn't know much about it. If the Lord of Death didn't venture too deep, doesn't that mean that the Death Rain isn't only filled with the power of death? It should be extremely dangerous. Yi Shiwen hurriedly asked. He felt even more uneasy. Indeed, there are many undead creatures living inside. They are born from the power of death. There might be extremely terrifying existences inside. Yi Qianqian did not hide anything. The death rain has never appeared before, so the outside world doesn't know much about it. Yi Shiwen scratched his head with a headache. He rarely had such a situation. He was worried about Yi Qianqian, but there was no way for him to leave. Just like how he was worried about Hua Menghan in the past, Hua Menghan, Yi Qianqian, and Dawn were different. Dawn only clung to him. He was everything in her life, and nothing else mattered to her. However, be it Yi Qianqian or Hua Menghan, they had an independent side to them. Yi Shiwen loved this side of them, but at this moment, he was vexed over it. He yearned to accompany Yi Qianqian into the death rain because there were too many unknowns and uncertainties inside. How could he feel at ease? Don't worry, I have a portion of the Lord of Death's memories. So although the death rain is dangerous, it isn't a near-death experience for me. There might be some inheritance inside that I can't obtain, so I don't want to give up. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Shiwen and said, I have never given up on my pursuit of the Tao. More importantly, I don't want to be left behind by you. Yi Qianqian's rapid improvement was an immense pressure on Yi Qianqian. Although she was in slumber, she was constantly absorbing the heritage of the Lord of Death. Her improvement was not slow, but she never expected that Yi Shiwen's improvement was much faster than hers. If she did not catch up, she might end up being a little woman hiding under Yi Shiwen's wings. That was not something she wished to see. Although she was not as ambitious as Man Yun, who wanted to become a great empress, she had a very strong personality. I don't want to just be a little woman hiding under your wings. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Shiwen with a very serious expression. Yi Shiwen could feel her seriousness. In the end, even though he was dissatisfied, he could only nod and said, But can't we enter after the battle is over? I'm afraid not. The entrance to the Death Rain isn't that stable. When the battle starts, this place might be destroyed overnight. If the entrance to the Death Rain collapses at that time, I'm afraid it won't be easy for me to find it again. Yi Qianqian shook her head. All right. Yi Shiwen held her soft hand. Although they had just reunited and had to part ways again, he was no longer a childish person. Moreover, he had already achieved the Tao, so he had a long way to go in the future. He could only comfort himself by saying, if we love each other for a long time, we won't be together all the time. However, Yi Qianqian was not in a hurry to leave. After 10 days, she passed through the entrance of the Death Rain and entered the Death Rain. During these 10 days, the Flame Lord did not stay behind to be a third wheel. Instead, he directly left to explore the outside world, leaving Yi Shiwen and Yi Qianqian to confide in each other. Yi Shiwen roughly told Yi Qianqian about the changes over the past few thousand years, as well as some things about himself. At the same time, Yi Shiwen also told Yi Qianqian about his understanding of the king-ranked realm by imprinting his spirit. This was not something an ordinary person could do. It was only possible when both parties had absolute trust in each other. At the same time, Yi Shiwen also gave the 10,000 spell roulette to Yi Qianqian. Although she had obtained the inheritance of the Death Lord had already fallen for countless years, so there was no supreme-grade divine artifact left behind. Moreover, the Death Rain was filled with unpredictable dangers. Yi Shiwen was really worried. However, if she had the 10,000 spell roulette to protect her, she would be much safer. Yi Qianqian did not reject it. With Yi Shiwen's protection, she easily refined the 10,000 spell roulette. Compared to the difficulty Yi Shiwen had faced back then, it was many times easier now. Seeing Yi Qianqian's figure disappear into the Death Rain, Yi Shiwen felt a sense of loss. It was not easy to reunite with her. However, seeing that she was fine, Yi Shiwen could finally put down the huge stone in his heart. Although the physician king had said that there was no problem, Yi Shiwen would not feel at ease if he did not see Yi Qianqian wake up. Not long after, the Flame Lord returned. In these few days, he had killed some powerful existences in the battlefield, including a divine king from the sky race. He had gained a lot. Although he did not have Yi Shiwen, he was also a powerful divine king and could not be underestimated. As long as he did not encounter a peak divine king, he would have no problem protecting himself. His many years of accumulation were not a joke. However, compared to Yi Shiwen, he was still inferior. In fact, he was not weak. Woo 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 woo. A loud horn sound came from the periphery of the battlefield, shaking the heavens and the earth. Yi Shiwen and the Flame Lord looked at each other and immediately understood that the battle was about to begin. This horn sound was summoning them back. During this period, both sides had been testing each other. The Divine King-level experts were fighting each other. Now that they had more or less figured out the situation of the battlefield, it was time to start the decisive battle. This ancient battlefield was about to descend into another battlefield. Yi Shiwen and the Flame Lord sped along the way. Especially Yi Shiwen, he kept tearing the void. In this battlefield, tearing the void crazily was something that he could only do now that he had the space wings. Although it took a lot of time to come in, by the time he reached the edge of the battlefield and entered the 8th Legion, it had actually only taken him a day. The Flame Lord also returned behind him. After another 3 days, Many divine kings who had gone deep into the battlefield had also returned. The various legions stationed outside had already begun to move. During this period, Yi Shiwen had also heard the reports from his subordinates. It turned out that the higher-ups felt that since the divine race army was still not willing to appear, then they should kill their way into the battlefield and use the rebellious emperor to force them out. They would then eradicate this super tumor in the heavens and the myriad worlds. This was a very obvious strategy to encircle the enemy and attack the reinforcements. However, this was also a strategy that the divine race could not refuse. They could not let the rebellious emperor die at the hands of the allied forces. Woo woo woo. The horn of war was blown. It was a horn made from the horn of an unknown giant beast. The entire universe started to tremble. Countless powerful life forms started to move, forming terrifying vibrational ripples. One by one, the war beasts came out of their cages. Their huge bodies were like stars in the void. At the same time, the huge war fortresses removed all their disguises and appeared in the void. The cavalry screamed. Chapter 2736. The horn of war sounded. The allied forces that had surrounded the entire battlefield for a long time were finally going to attack. Although there may have been emperor kings buried here, under such an army, it was enough to sweep everything away. There was no way to resist. The war fortresses exuded a dark and cold light in the universe. They tore apart the camouflage and began to sweep. Walla-la-la! Countless divine lights soared into the sky and swept out. Any one of the lights was comparable to the terrifying power of a god's all-out attack. It was comparable to the gods. This was the strongest war machine that the allied forces could create. Any war fortress was like many gods joining forces to launch a terrible attack. In fact, the core of the war fortress was powered by the godhood of the gods. Since the war fortresses appeared many years ago, they had almost developed to the peak. It was even said that there were war fortresses that could threaten the God-King level. However, Yi Shiwen had not seen it yet. Perhaps it was not the time yet. These ordinary war fortresses were enough to sweep the world. After the war fortresses launched the first attack, the cavalry crossed the sky. Countless cavalry of the allied forces riding terrifying beasts swept the entire universe like a black tide. Behind these cavalrymen, the war beasts strode forward. These ferocious beasts that possessed the bloodline of the beast ancestor could cause the void to tremble with every step they took. They possessed unparalleled power and incredible defense. The rampage of each war beast could open up a line of defense, and they were extremely precious. If it wasn't for the fact that they had to deal with D&I, which was a huge matter that concerned all the worlds, they definitely wouldn't have been able to gather so many war beasts. Every sect had to pay a huge price to raise a war beast. Only the king-level sects dared to raise a large number of war beasts. At this time, the experts of the celestial race in the battlefield were also dispatched. This was also a stronghold of the celestial race. There were many experts and also a large army. Otherwise, the army that besieged this place would be enough to completely annihilate them. Swish! 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 Countless arrows cut through the void of the universe and directly bombarded into the battlefield. Each arrow could turn a mountain into powder and shatter a vacuum. Poochie! 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 Many of the Tian clan experts were caught off guard and were directly pierced through, their primordial spirits destroyed. These cavalrymen of the allied forces weren't just ordinary godly archers. They themselves possessed extraordinary skills, and every single arrow they shot was deadly. Their accuracy was incomparable, and they were able to directly take a life. Even if they were thousands of miles away, they wouldn't be able to block their line of sight. It was extremely terrifying. Flowers of blood blossomed one after another. As soon as they made contact, the Tian clan army's first line of defense was completely defeated. They did not have many people to begin with, and just by relying on numbers, the experts of the various allied forces were enough to crush them. In just a few breaths of time, the cavalry of the various allied armies galloped through the sky, and the Tian clan experts who did not have time to escape were instantly trampled into meat paste. No one was able to escape. Behind them, The battle fortress was unleashing its power. Every few seconds, dozens of pillar-like beams of light would sweep across the sky and land in front of the cavalry. They would plow the ground and open up a path for them. These cavalrymen of the Allied armies only needed to kill some of the fish that had escaped the net. The net wasn't big. In the entire battlefield, these terrifying knights galloped unhindered, sweeping through everything in their path. No one could stop them. The first line of defense set up by the Tian clan Allied forces collapsed in an instant. Other than the Tian clan, there were also many vengeful spirits and evil beings on the battlefield. At this moment, they were all shaken to death. They all possessed the power of extreme yin and evil. Encountering such a terrifying military aura, the power of extreme yang, they did not even need to exchange blows. It was enough to kill them all. Moreover, this was an army formed by demigods, which was extremely powerful. The blood energy of countless people intertwined together, enough to shake any evil spirit to death. No evil spirit would dare to charge into such an army, and the ordinary evil spirits of the mortal world would not dare to attack the soldiers with powerful blood energy, let alone the powerful army of demigods or gods. The allied armies of the various races attacked from all directions. The defensive lines were practically swept through one after another, and their speed was extremely fast. From afar, it looked like a raging tide that continuously surged forward, sweeping through everything in its path and shattering everything in its path. On the battlefield, broken laws could be seen everywhere. At this time, the Tian clan army was already waiting solemnly. In fact, they had never relaxed for even a moment, but the initiative had always been in the hands of the Allied armies, not in their hands. Although the attack of the Allied armies was a little sudden, it did not cause them to panic. However, even if they were prepared, it would be useless. Although there were many experts in the Tian clan here, it was nothing compared to the Allied armies that had already mobilized most of their experts. The defensive line had already been shattered by the impact of the war fortress. Following that, the cavalry of the various races that rushed up directly swept through and killed the remaining people like a tornado. The experts of the Tian clan screamed miserably. Many of them were pierced through by a single spear. With such a terrifying army, even the God King would have to take a detour, not daring to fight against them. This was a one-sided massacre. The difference in military strength between the two sides was too great, and they were not on the same level at all. Although the Tian clan had set up many experts, it was still like an ant trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot, and they could not even escape. Yi Shiwen saw several god lords being pierced through the heart by tens of thousands of arrows and directly shot to death. In the face of such a large number, strength seemed to no longer be that important. Yi Shiwen followed the 8th Legion and attacked from the west. He did not directly attack. Until now, he had not met anyone who was worthy of his attack. Countless cavalrymen swept through several layers of defense in an instant. Kill! Battle cries tore through the sky. Suddenly, there was a loud roar that shook the heavens and the earth, and the battlefield seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Many defensive arrays were instantly wiped out. If he encountered a more difficult array, Yi Shiwen would only attack and erase the array. Once he attacked, he would instantly destroy the array, allowing the 8th Legion to advance without hindrance. At this time, many people in the 8th Legion could not help but secretly click their tongues. Their Legion commander was simply more tyrannical than the legends said. The army advanced like a tide, and their speed was extremely fast. They rushed all the way, and in less than half a day, they had already swept into the depths of the battlefield. At this time, the resistance of the Heavenly Clan was also becoming more and more intense. Even the God Kings in the 8th Legion's formation had attacked one after another. Although they were not as powerful as Yi Shiwen, once they attacked, they also swept in all directions with the momentum of thunder. It was enough to sweep through many arrays. Finally, there was a loud roar, and an extremely powerful array was broken. The army advanced straight in, and directly killed their way into the core area of the Heavenly Clan's base. All the defenses were broken, and they were wiped out on the spot. Kill! Battle cries shook the sky, and several powerful god kings took out their own top-grade divine weapons, which fell like mountains and stars. This forced the heavenly clan's array to lose its effect, and it was broken by the top-grade divine weapons. Although it was not as powerful as Yi Shiwen, it was enough. The heavenly clan was once the #1 clan in the world. They were tyrannical enough, and from afar, they could see worlds overlapping one another. It was not strange for them to be able to do such a thing in the outside world, but to be able to do such a thing here was simply unbelievable. Their foundation could be seen. The experts of the Heavenly Clan did not expect that the 8th Legion would advance so quickly. In such a short period of time, they had already killed their way to their core area. All of you deserve to die. Many experts of the Heavenly Clan roared continuously, relying on the formation to resist the cavalry of the 8th Legion. However, the 8th Legion was simply too strong, and they could not help but feel their hair stand on end. There were 3 other legions that were attacking at the same time, while the other legions did not move. They were used to encircle and attack the Heavenly Clan's army. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally moved. His figure flew up from the throne in the army, and directly flew in front of the army. He stood in the air and let out a loud roar. "D&I, come out and die. If you don't come out today, all of the Heavenly Clan will die. Do you want all of the Heavenly Clan to die with you?" Yi Shiwen flew above the void, like a monarch descending to the world, his might boundless. A shocking battle was inevitable, and blood splattered across the blue sky. The original plan was to surround them and not attack, but since the Heavenly Clan refused to appear first, then they would force them out. "Who are you?" Someone in the Heavenly Clan roared. Many of them were very clear about the experts in the Alliance army, but the person in front of them looked a little unfamiliar, as if he was not a common expert. Could it be that the matter this time had alarmed some old antiques to personally appear? "Yi Shiwen," Yi Shiwen said loudly, announcing his identity. The Heavenly Clan was immediately in an uproar. This name was not very famous, and they seemed to have heard of it before, but how could it be so strong? Their hearts were filled with shock. Chapter 2737. If the information that some of them received was correct, then Yi Shiwen should just be a rising junior of the human clan. There were many such figures in the heavens and myriad realms, and there were many in their celestial clan. According to their confidence, the younger generation of their clan must be better than the other clans in the heavens and myriad realms. But what was going on now? It seemed like Yi Shiwen was actually the leader of this powerful legion. If the information they had obtained previously was not wrong, this should be a position that only the 10 great divine kings could possibly sit on. But now, there was an additional unknown junior. One could imagine how shocked they were. Could he be the illegitimate child of some emperor? Otherwise, how could he do this? Behind Yi Shiwen, countless soldiers were shouting and cheering for him. Their vigor was monstrous, and their battle aura was surging. It was unknown how many people were shouting together. Is NID still not coming out? He was lucky to escape last time, but this time, he won't be so lucky. Yi Shiwen sneered. What? Everyone was finally convinced that Yi Shiwen had fought with NID in the Kurfürst Road before, and it seemed that NID had escaped. Although everyone knew that NID had obtained the opportunity to become an emperor, no one knew exactly how he obtained it. Now it seemed that he was also quite embarrassed at that time. Kill them, avenge our dead compatriots. Someone in the Celestial Clan shouted, "Stop them, wait for the army to arrive, and send them to heaven." At this time, they also understood that if they couldn't stop these people, not only would they die, but more importantly, it would also cut off the hope of the Celestial Clan for countless years in the future. In order to seize the Kurfürst Road this time, it could be said that they had been planning for countless years. In order to calculate the time when the opportunity to become an emperor would arrive, they simply burned the life of a powerful figure. With his sacrifice, they barely calculated that the opportunity to become an emperor would arrive in this era, and then made a lot of preparations to succeed. Next time, perhaps the clans would not give them such an opportunity. If they missed this opportunity, there would be no more. These masters of the Celestial Clan were also stirred up. Deep down, they were still the Super Clan, and it was natural for them to rule the world. Bang! Yi Shiwen's palm slapped down. It was like a pair of wings falling from the sky. A large number of celestial race experts were smashed to death. Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength shocked everyone. In the eyes of those Tian clan experts who didn't understand the situation, the 10 great divine kings were nothing more than this. They had been locked up for a long time, so they didn't know that Yi Shiwen had just defeated Pure Moon King. That was why they were so shocked. On the other hand, the allied forces of the various races were extremely excited. With such a powerful army commander, they would undoubtedly be much safer. However, these experts of the heavenly race seemed to have been aroused by the same hatred. Not only were they not intimidated by Yi Shiwen, but they also continued to attack wave after wave. Suddenly, the entire void was filled with battle cries. The void shattered and was splashed with divine blood. Battle cries could be heard everywhere. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood could be seen everywhere. Blood flowing in reverse to form a river was no longer a mere description, but a reality. From time to time, the corpses of powerful gods fell from the sky like dumplings falling into a pot. It was incomparably tragic. At this moment, there was no longer any rationality. Everyone was fighting. Yi Shiwen was also on a killing spree. An expert like him, who was comparable to the 10 great divine kings, was on a killing spree. One could imagine how terrifying it was. Wherever he went, the defensive line collapsed in an instant. It was impossible to stop him. He alone was comparable to the collision and attack of thousands of soldiers and horses. For the Tian clan, there was no way out. There was no way to retreat. Either the other party died, or they themselves were going to die. There were only two possibilities. And at this moment, a figure suddenly jumped out. This figure appeared in front of Yi Shiwen in an instant. His aura was incomparably powerful, and he suddenly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. This was a skinny old man. He seemed to be one of the old antiques of the Tian clan. As soon as he came up, he erupted with the most terrifying attack against Yi Shiwen. It was very clear that Yi Shiwen was terrifying. He was simply invincible. He had already reached the peak divine king realm. Moreover, his accumulation was very deep. If he was given some time, there might be hope for him to break through to the 10 great divine kings realm. Junior, you are too arrogant. Let me teach you a lesson. This skinny old man's eyes were like the color of amber. He looked abnormally strange and extremely terrifying. Teach me a lesson? Just by relying on you, old thing? Yi Shiwen sneered. He did not dodge or evade. With his gilded tyrant form, he took the terrifying attack of this old man alive. However, he did not even shake a little. This level of attack might have some chance to injure Yi Shiwen 10 years ago. However, for the current Yi Shiwen, it was still far from enough. Not good. At this moment, this skinny old man finally realized that the problem was not right. He did not hold back at all against Yi Shiwen. He wanted to take Yi Shiwen's life as soon as he came up. However, his full-strength attack did not even make Yi Shiwen shake a little. How terrifying was this? It was simply unimaginable. He immediately retreated continuously. He wanted to get out of Yi Shiwen's attack range. His whole body was about to disappear into the void at the same time. You want to leave? Isn't it a little too late to leave now? Yi Shiwen sneered. His big hand suddenly grabbed out. It turned into lightning and directly grabbed. Yi Shiwen's big hand suddenly rushed out and hit the skinny old man's chest fiercely. Bang! There was a sound like gold and iron colliding. The old man's chest was directly blasted into a huge bloody hole. Blood splattered out and bone fragments flew everywhere. With just one blow, a peak divine king existence was seriously injured. The people on the side of the Celestial Clan were dumbfounded. In their hearts, this old man was an invincible existence. However, he was not Yi Shiwen's opponent. Moreover, it was not as simple as not being Yi Shiwen's opponent. He was completely injured in just one move. Go quickly. We are not his opponent. This skinny old man forcibly pressed down on his wound and retreated repeatedly. He did not dare to stay for a long time. Using the force of being blasted away by Yi Shiwen, he directly escaped into the distance. You want to leave? It's too late. Yi Shiwen sneered. He let out a long roar, and his entire body was like a golden rock spreading its wings. He swept across and stomped down with his foot. Bang! The old man's divine body instantly shattered and scattered in all directions. In an instant, his primordial spirit was destroyed by Yi Shiwen's stomp, and his body was swallowed by the demon beckoning flag. Humph! Yi Shiwen snorted coldly in the air, like a great devil god who had stood in the heavens for tens of thousands of years. With a flip of his palm, a flag appeared, and with a sudden wave of the flag, countless demon clans pounced out, directly pouncing towards the experts of the Celestial Clan. Although they were not a match for the experts of the Celestial Clan, their numbers were endless. Furthermore, Yi Shiwen was watching from the side, constantly attacking, and from time to time, he would point out with a finger to shatter some of the more powerful experts of the Celestial Clan. Without these people to lead the way, the other Celestial Clan could not resist at all, and quickly became food for the Demon Clan. After devouring the blood essence of these Celestial Clan experts, the speed at which the Demon Kings and the Demon Beckoning Flag transformed became faster and faster, and their strength became stronger and stronger. What's going on? Not only was the Tian clan army scared out of their wits, even the allied forces of the various races were completely shocked. Where did Yi Shiwen find so many experts? What's going on with these Demon Clan experts? Where did they come from? Why haven't I seen them before? Why do I seem to see all those famous and invincible seniors in the history of my Demon Clan? A godly king of the Demon Clan could not help but ask doubtfully. He was more knowledgeable and could recognize that some of the Demon Clan were the ancestors of the current Demon Clan. Those are already dead. It's impossible for them to revive. Could it be the Demon Beckoning Flag? In that instant, he seemed to have thought of something. In this situation, there was only one possibility, and that was the Demon Beckoning Flag. Thinking of the name of the Demon Beckoning Flag, he suddenly became excited. It was one of the few powerful instruments in the history of the Demon Clan. In the history of the Demon Clan, the only things that could be compared to it were probably the Demon Emperor Bell and a few others. However, the Demon Beckoning Flag was different from the Demon Emperor Bell. The Demon Emperor Bell had already fallen into the hands of the ancient heavenly court, so it could be considered as returning to its original owner. However, the Demon Beckoning Flag was completely shattered in that battle, and now this Demon Beckoning Flag should be only one of the remaining fragments. However, if it was a remnant fragment, it should not be so powerful. How could it be so powerful? He could not figure it out. His words quickly attracted the attention of many people, and it quickly spread throughout the entire 8th Legion. Only then did everyone understand that Yi Shiwen actually had such a heaven-defying instrument. Although it was only a fragment, it was still a legend to them. Even a godly king would be extremely lucky to have a Tao instrument, even if it was only a fragment. However, when they thought of Yi Shiwen's strength and the time it took for him to rise, they felt relieved. A monster was a monster after all. His strength was already so amazing, so it seemed normal for him to have a Demon Beckoning Flag. Yi Shiwen did not hide this time, because he already had enough strength now. Even if they knew that he had a Demon Beckoning Flag, so what? Who would dare to snatch it? Even the 10 great godly kings would not dare to have any ideas about him. Human, you've gone too far. A loud roar came from afar, and there was a huge collapse in the void. Some of the cavalry of the allied forces of the various clans were charging at the forefront. If they were not careful, they would be drawn in instantly. It was like a meat grinder, and they were wiped out in an instant. Chapter 2738. At that moment, finally, the super expert hidden in the heaven race couldn't take it anymore and attacked. A loud roar turned into a terrifying sound wave that ripped apart the experts of the Alliance army. A terrifying expert had appeared. Yi Shiwen's expression finally became dignified, but he didn't put away the Demon Beckoning banner and let those Demon Kings fight wantonly. In any case, they wouldn't die as long as a little bit of their true spirit wasn't destroyed. Even if their bodies were destroyed, they could be reborn in the Demon Beckoning banner. Unless the Demon Summoning banner in his hand was destroyed, These demon kings formed from true spirits would not die. Originally, this was a method used to control many demon kings of the demon race. However, it now had a new use in Yi Shiwen's hands. A valiant-looking man in an imperial robe with amber eyes slowly emerged from the void. "How dare you?" Although Yi Shiwen had never seen this person before, he recognized him right away. "Emperor Tianqi, it is actually you. I didn't expect to meet you here. We really are fated." Yi Shiwen's lips curled up and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. Not many years later, he met Emperor Tianqi once more. Yi Shiwen still couldn't forget his aura. Back then, he was severely injured. At that time, Emperor Tianqi was too strong for him. If it wasn't for King Lai holding him back, he would have died a horrible death. This hatred was so huge that they couldn't live under the same sky. Now that they were here, it was time to solve it. In the air, Emperor Tianqi's body was really eye-catching and golden clouds floated around him. "So, it is you?" Emperor Tianqi finally recognized Yi Shiwen and was slightly surprised. At that time, Yi Shiwen couldn't even protect himself in front of him. However, only a few years had passed, and it was rare for him to improve, so he didn't think much of it. "Right, at that time, you definitely didn't expect that we would have a chance to fight, right?" Yi Shiwen said calmly. "What right do you have to fight me?" Emperor Tianqi said proudly. He placed his hands behind his back and didn't care about Yi Shiwen at all. "I think that you have no one else to actually let a kid like you lead the army." "What a joke. What right do I need to fight you? The reason why I'm here is because I alone am enough to deal with you." Yi Shiwen laughed coldly and walked towards Emperor Tianqi step by step. His body gave off a golden glow, and the area around him shook along with his footsteps. It was as if a world was inspecting its own territory. What an arrogant junior. It seems like he really doesn't know how high the heavens are just because he has some cultivation. Emperor Tianqi stood with his arms behind his back and didn't think much of it. Yi Shiwen moved in an instant. He was like a powerful celestial emperor. He took a step forward, and the void sank a bit. It seemed as if it couldn't bear such a weight. A sky-toppling energy wave appeared around Emperor Tianqi's body. Their auras clashed and reverberated between the two of them. Before it even started, the terrifying aura from both sides was something that the Heaven Race and Alliance Army couldn't take anymore. Even a God Monarch expert would find it hard to withstand such might at this moment. Boom! The surrounding space seemed to have suffered a heavy blow and collapsed. The experts of the various allied armies and the Tian clan all retreated, not daring to approach. The two people in the center of the battlefield seemed to have disappeared into the horizon with just a thought. The two of them were too strong, and if they went all out, there might be unimaginable consequences. "Die!" Emperor Tianqi hollered, and in the sky, numerous golden swords appeared and slashed towards Yi Shiwen. They locked down Yi Shiwen's escape route. He actually wanted to kill Yi Shiwen in one go. The golden sword light turned into an ocean. When it swept over, it was like a golden storm that drowned everything. Each golden sword wasn't normal energy, but the condensation of Tao laws. They were all condensed, and when they swept out, heaven and earth collapsed. Each of them could easily kill a deity, and the Tao laws contained within them were ridiculously strong. The moment Emperor Tianqi made his move, he displayed his powerful strength that was comparable to the 10 great god kings. It was because of such powerful strength that he could lead the Tianqi dynasty. This kind of person was comparable to thousands of soldiers and horses. If they did not stop him, he could block the attack of the entire 8th Division. Even if he could kill them, the 8th Division would be crippled. If they let him escape, it would be even more terrifying. Compared to when he casually attacked Yi Shiwen, it was much more terrifying. At that time, he was entangled by King Lai and could only casually attack. He didn't use his full strength, and he didn't dare to. But now, he was going all out. One could imagine how strong it was. Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid at all. He attacked right away, and his god country expanded. A wind and lightning power swept across, turning into a shocking storm that blocked the numerous golden swords. Yi Shiwen's power of wind and thunder was more like the power of the origin of the universe. It involved some questions of the origin. Yi Shiwen stood motionless in the midst of this boundless power of wind and thunder. His sleeves fluttered in the wind. He looked like a god in the chaos who had recreated the world. Hong long long. Endless collisions formed into numerous clashing sounds, and each one of them could destroy heaven and earth. It was extremely terrifying. The originally fragile battlefield actually had a formless pressure sweeping out at this moment, stabilizing the collapsing heaven and earth. This was the tomb of an emperor king who was buried in it. The heavens were protecting it and taking care of it. At such a time, it naturally turned into an invisible power that stabilized the battlefield. Emperor Tianqi was a little shocked. His strike was actually broken so easily by Yi Shiwen, and he couldn't even break his god country. His expression became serious. This person was probably much more terrifying than he had expected. However, that was all. He instantly rushed out, and his whole body instantly turned into a shadow above the sky. In an instant, he covered the sky and earth, tearing the sky and earth apart, and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Each one of them wasn't an illusion, and they were all real. Each of them contained a supreme law, and they were simply invincible. The numerous shadows represented numerous terrifying attacks. Everyone was shocked. Emperor Tianqi was able to rule the Tianqi dynasty for so many years, and as expected, he wasn't a simple person. Such strength far surpassed normal king-level experts. I don't care how many shadows you have. They are all illusions. Break them all. Yi Shiwen roared, and his figure moved like lightning. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and the fist force collapsed between his fingers, turning into 6 paths of reincarnation, and instantly blasted out. In midair, the 6 paths reincarnation continued to spin. Emperor Tianqi's incarnations pounced over, but they were destroyed by the 6 paths reincarnation. They were sent into the 6 paths reincarnation and didn't affect Yi Shiwen at all. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen's 6 paths reincarnation became stronger and stronger. It continued to press down, and Emperor Tianqi's incarnations were destroyed one by one. From afar, the scenes were really terrifying. It was as if Yi Shiwen was going against a golden wave alone. What a terrifying battle. Even we can't take such ripples. Be it the Alliance Army or the Heaven Race experts, they were all stunned. They didn't dare to imagine how terrifying it would be if they were the ones being destroyed. Facing the clones that were being destroyed by Yi Shiwen, Emperor Tianqi hollered. His majestic body leaped out, and instantly energy waves surged into the sky. It was as if the real Emperor Tianqi had been reborn. A seal appeared in his hand. This seal was the top-grade god weapon that he always carried with him. Who knew how many years he had refined it for? It was extremely strong, and it smashed down right away. It was as if the entire universe was flipping over and heading towards Yi Shiwen. It was extremely terrifying. Even as one of the 10 god kings, he had to face such an attack carefully. However, Yi Shiwen's countenance didn't change in the slightest in the face of these visions. He was like an old monk in meditation, incomparably calm. At the same time, Yi Shiwen transformed the overturning the sky seal. However, this was his unique martial arts technique, and not a genuine divine tool. So, it shouldn't have been able to compete with the Heaven Opening Seal, which was a top-grade divine tool and an invincible martial art technique. However, Yi Shiwen took a different approach and used his tyrannical body as a barrier. So, he didn't fall into a disadvantageous position when facing the Heaven Opening Seal. Pung! 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 A shocking battle erupted in the sky. Their seals clashed in the sky, and the bright light that exploded shocked everyone. At the same time, Emperor Tianqi's numerous clones pounced towards Yi Shiwen and didn't give him a chance to react at all. Yi Shiwen was really calm and continued to kill. He used the 6 paths of reincarnation fist to kill any clones that dared to get close to him. Although they are all clones, they are all formed from your essence blood. I don't believe that you can last forever. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly. At such a cultivation level, to outsiders, one's power was limitless and endless. But to them, it was easy to face such problems when fighting people of the same level. It was normal for one's power to not last till the end. As expected, Emperor Tianqi realized this problem. He didn't wait anymore and hollered. Suddenly, everything in the world shook and was under his control. Essence energy turned into a terrifying current that surged into his body. He condensed a seal in his hand. The power of the stars swept across, and the power of countless principles formed a chessboard. It traversed between heaven and earth, and a huge net fell down towards Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2739. In the face of this big net formed by the great Tao, Yi Shiwen just shouted, "Break for me!" Golden light burst forth from both of his hands, and boundless divine power wrapped around them. He directly collided with the big net. All the power in his body burst forth, and he actually wanted to tear the big net apart. Emperor Tianqi was shocked and didn't expect Yi Shiwen to use such a method to break it. That was a little ridiculous. But then he laughed coldly. If such a method could rip his net apart, then Yi Shiwen was underestimating it. His Tao net was entwined with countless laws, and it was not something that ordinary people could imagine. This person would definitely die without a burial. Kong, kong, kong. The sound of metal colliding resounded. Yi Shiwen's hands collided with the Tao net and collided with it. It seemed as if the Tao net was going to be torn apart. It's useless. No matter what tricks you have, it's absolutely impossible for you to tear apart my Tao net. Emperor Tianqi laughed coldly. A golden sword appeared in his hand. He stepped out and wanted to use this chance to kill Yi Shiwen. Is that so? You can't rip it apart? Yi Shiwen let out a loud roar. His eyes turned crimson, and an astonishing fierce aura erupted from him like a vicious beast. At the same time, dark scales abruptly grew on his golden skin. Soon, the scales covered his hands and extended all the way to his chest. At the crucial moment, he used the beast ancestor incarnation and turned into a half-beast. His tyrant body was already extremely strong and could shake the net. Now, with the addition of the beast ancestor incarnation's power, he roared. Kacha! There was a loud explosion and a huge hole was ripped open in the net. At that moment, Emperor Tianqi's attack arrived, and he slashed down towards Yi Shiwen. Dang! This sword directly bombarded Yi Shiwen's body. However, it couldn't hurt Yi Shiwen at all. Instead, it directly slashed on his scales and issued a sound of metal clashing. A burst of electricity and sparks flew. How is that possible? Emperor Tianqi's voice was filled with disbelief and disbelief. Firstly, Yi Shiwen had torn open his Tao net by relying on his own brute force. This was unprecedented. He had never encountered such a thing. He had never faced such a thing before. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen wasn't a normal person anymore. He was a monster in human skin. How could a normal person have such strength? Even the powerful races like the Titans that he knew of couldn't cultivate their strength to this level. How could he do it? What made him even more shocked was that his sword couldn't even break Yi Shiwen's defense. This was simply a joke. It was simply impossible for such a terrifying existence to exist. How is it not possible? Yi Shiwen laughed viciously. His eyes were red, and he looked like a beast in human form. He punched out. This punch didn't have any fist intent, and it was just a simple punch. It actually caused a giant crack in the space, and it shot towards Emperor Tianqi. Dang! Emperor Tianqi didn't have time at all and could only raise his sword to block. His body shook, and he felt a terrifying power smashing into his body through the sword, causing him to fly backward. He was caught off guard and was sent flying by Yi Shiwen. The experts from both sides who were paying attention to the battle finally came back to their senses. They swallowed mouthfuls of saliva and shouted in their hearts. Damn, this was too terrifying. Was he really a monster? In the eyes of many people, Yi Shiwen was ridiculously strong since he was only relying on his physical strength to fight. Scoff, scoff. Emperor Tianqi, let's settle the score for you plotting against me in the past. Yi Shiwen walked towards Emperor Tianqi step by step. Each step would instantly bring him 1,000 miles away. This speed wasn't fast, and it was as if Yi Shiwen had gone to the other extreme, using strength to suppress others. His heavy sword had no edge, but it was like he was just too skillful. Junior, you were too arrogant. I was careless just now, But do you think that's all I have? Emperor Tianqi calmed himself down and suppressed the surging blood. He nearly spat out a mouthful of blood from Yi Shiwen's punch. But he knew that he couldn't spit it out now, otherwise his essence blood would scatter, and he would be at a disadvantage in the following battle. What technique? I will use it all at once. I want to see how you can struggle now. The scales on Yi Shiwen's body disappeared like they were growing back into his flesh. The red color in his eyes disappeared, and he was totally awake. He looked towards Emperor Tianqi with a cold gaze. Scoff! Emperor Tianqi waved his hands coldly, and the space cracked. A giant palace actually descended from the sky. It was actually another top-quality god artifact. Tianqi dynasty had been established for so many years, and their foundations were really terrifying. Emperor Tianqi disappeared, and when he appeared once more, he was in the palace. With the palace as the center, a god country appeared. Within the god country, spiritual energy formed many generals. This was a god country that he had formed along with the palace. This was why he could block an army alone. No matter what kind of god country it was nothing in front of his army. Kill! This army let out an angry roar and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The armored cavalry soared into the sky. Good timing. Yi Shiwen laughed out loud. He wasn't afraid at all and charged out. A terrifying power was released from his body. When he turned into a half-beast, he had accumulated a lot of fierce energy in his heart. He could use this chance to release it. Honk! There was a giant explosion as the fist energy shot out. Instantly, tens of thousands of spiritual energy soldiers were smashed into pieces. However, more and more soldiers were being formed. In this way, Yi Shiwen might soon fall into an endless siege and eventually die of exhaustion. This would be a great deterrent for the other top 10 king-level experts. However, it was still far from enough for Yi Shiwen. On Yi Shiwen's body, countless flames began to spurt out from his pores, unceasingly sweeping out, forming a flame domain. Those soldiers hadn't even gotten close to him, and had already been burnt by his Nanmingli fire. For him, group battles were the last thing he was afraid of. Looking at the large number of soldiers dying, Emperor Tianqi's face turned green. These soldiers weren't formed from normal spiritual energy, but from his believers. Since he came to power, they were formed from the souls of the soldiers who died in battles. They were his most loyal supporters, and now Yi Shiwen killed a large group of them. If he could pile up Yi Shiwen to death with numbers, then he, the Iron Blood Emperor, would not hesitate at all. However, it seemed that it was impossible to exhaust Yi Shiwen to death. Shwa! The floating palace finally moved, and the entire huge palace pressed down towards Yi Shiwen. Every inch of it caused the void to collapse. It was as if all the laws were absorbed by it, and then it swept the world. It had the aura of a king. Prunks! Yi Shiwen's whole body was directly smashed. Many people cried out in alarm, especially many experts of the 8th Legion. Many of them were knowledgeable and knew how terrifying this palace was. It was a top-quality god artifact. Even a god king would die if he tried to fight it head-on. It wasn't that they had such deep feelings for Yi Shiwen. It was just that if Yi Shiwen died, then they wouldn't be able to escape from Emperor Tianqi's pursuit. Only their 8th army was in charge of attacking the west. The other armies were either attacking in other directions or didn't even come in. This was why Yi Shiwen was important to them. He was their pillar, and they couldn't let him die. No matter what their original thoughts were, they all hoped that Yi Shiwen could survive. However, to everyone's horror, not only was Yi Shiwen not smashed into meat sauce, but he also blasted a big hole at the bottom of the entire palace and flew into it. Everyone could see that Yi Shiwen had appeared in the center of the main hall. Everyone opened their mouths and didn't know what to say. With their knowledge and experience, this was the first time they had seen such a body. It seemed like they had thought too much. After all, a monster was a monster. How could he be suppressed so easily? Yi Shiwen, I think you really don't want to take the path to heaven and instead barge into hell. This was the first time Emperor Tianqi called Yi Shiwen's name. This was also the first time he acknowledged Yi Shiwen's identity. Before this, he didn't care about Yi Shiwen at all. To a junior, he had the right and pride to do so. But now, he treated Yi Shiwen as a strong opponent, one that could be mentioned in the same breath as him. Within the palace, the hole that Yi Shiwen broke through was recovering at a shocking speed. Is this hell? I don't think so. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly and didn't care about Emperor Tianqi's words at all. Scoff, scoff. Once you die, you will know how arrogant you are. Let me send you to heaven. Emperor Tianqi hollered, and the palace shook. Chapter 2740. Emperor Tianqi hollered, and the entire palace started to shake. He had ruled the world for millions of years and had never been so furious. Even when he faced King Blazing Sun, he didn't feel this way, because in his mind, King Lai Ri was a powerful existence that could be compared with him, and Yi Shiwen was nothing compared to him. He was merely relying on his tyrannical strength, and there was nothing special about him. Now that he was trapped in this palace, it was time for him to die. This was the personal artifact of Emperor Tianqi. After he fell, this palace became the artifact that was passed down from generation to generation. Out of all the top-grade artifacts, it was one of the top ones. Now that Yi Shiwen was trapped, he was definitely going to die. Emperor Tianqi's body slowly disappeared. In an instant, it was as if he had disappeared from the entire world. At the same time, all sorts of laws appeared in the palace. All sorts of laws that couldn't be obtained at the same time were revealed in an instant. They formed a giant net and then disappeared into the sky. Shortly after, Yi Shiwen felt like he had fallen into a swamp. All the laws started to restrict his movements. They began to reveal their own characteristics and rushed towards Yi Shiwen in an overwhelming manner. If it was anyone else, they would have been shredded into pieces by this law net. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't the same. As the net continued to land on him, layers of bright light appeared on his skin. This was his body instinctively defending against the attacks. Whirlpools formed one after another in Emperor Tianqi's palace. Within these whirlpools, numerous soldiers appeared and pounced towards Yi Shiwen. Scoff, I want to see how long more you can last, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Although he was affected a little, he didn't feel like it was a big deal. Punk, punk, punk. Yi Shiwen's speed was terrifyingly quick. Compared to the terrifying strength that he displayed before, this time, Yi Shiwen displayed his terrifying speed. Even if he was restricted by the laws in this palace and couldn't use his full speed, in everyone's eyes, Yi Shiwen was still unimaginably fast. It was as if he had turned into thousands of clones, and each punch could kill a large group of soldiers. Endless soldiers appeared in the palace. Yi Shiwen's clones were numerous, and he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. Looking over, it was really shocking. A cold snort came from the palace. Then, above the palace, an incomparably huge scroll slowly appeared. There were mountains and rivers on it, like a projection of the world was clearly projected above, slowly condensing into shape. This terrifying pressure instantly crushed down in all directions. Many people could feel it from afar. Even Yi Shiwen felt some pressure. This is the projection of the world power. Yi Shiwen recognized it right away. He had faced similar techniques in the past, but compared to Emperor Tianqi's world projection, it paled in comparison. This wasn't Emperor Tianqi's own strength anymore. He was borrowing the power of the world to suppress Yi Shiwen. Even a peak god king was far weaker than the power of a world. It was just that under normal circumstances, the power of a world couldn't be gathered together. But if someone used it, it would be able to display unimaginable power. This power was slowly increasing. Soon, it had grown to the point where even Yi Shiwen felt a strong pressure. It had far exceeded the power that could be projected from an ordinary world. Although the power of the world was boundless when projected, the world had its own will. Even if an ordinary person had unparalleled martial arts, they would not be able to borrow this power unless they had a very deep relationship with the world. Only then would they be able to borrow the power of the world. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, he immediately understood. If he was not wrong, this should be the world where the Heaven Awakening dynasty was the Heaven Awakening world. Tianqi Emperor must have borrowed the power of the Tianqi world, which was why he was able to form such terrifying power. The Tianqi dynasty had been in the Tianqi world for many years and was one with the world. Moreover, such a huge force would offer sacrifices to the heavens every once in a while, deepening their connection with the heavens. This way, they could faintly obtain the protection of this world's will, and the clan would prosper continuously, producing many experts and geniuses. There was an old saying that only war and sacrifice were important matters in a country. The more sacrifices there were, the more the heavens would protect the power. Thus, no one dared to treat it lightly. The Tianqi dynasty had sacrificed to the heavens for many years. One could imagine how terrifying the power they could borrow from that world was. Yi Shiwen's divine kingdom was the first to collapse when this terrifying power came crashing down. It happened almost in an instant. Like a calamity, the projection of the world pressed down, and it was enough to crush anyone who didn't submit. Ha ha, Yi Shiwen! How can you fight against the entire world alone? Tianqi Emperor's arrogant voice spread out. This terrifying world energy could shatter everything, and there was no power that could compare to it. Yi Shiwen instantly felt that the god power that he gave off was being suppressed. If it was in the outside world, it would be okay, but in this palace, Yi Shiwen's strength was suppressed. Moreover, the power of the Tianqi world surged out through this palace. So strong. As expected, these factions that have been passed down for so many years have unimaginable foundations. Even this Tianqi emperor has such methods. He is really amazing. Huh, Yi Shiwen hollered. His body gave off a chaotic power. At that moment, he seemed to have turned into a god dragon that was rolling in the chaos. It was the ancestral dragon. The ancestral dragon had 9 claws and was different from the dragon race. He was an invincible existence in the dragon race, and his existence was a legend. This divine dragon tumbled and actually resisted the crushing power of the entire world. Ancestral dragon. Tianqi Emperor recognized this invincible god dragon right away. This was someone who could be mentioned on the same level as his ancestor, or even stronger. In the history of the world, there weren't many people who could be mentioned on the same level as him. Scoff, unless you are the ancestral dragon. Otherwise, even if you can form his true body, it is useless. No matter how strong you are, you can't be compared to an entire world. How is that possible for you to fight an entire world? Tianqi Emperor laughed coldly, and the power that pressed down became stronger and stronger. The ancestral dragon kept tumbling and actually withstood the power of the entire world. When the ancestral dragon was formed, there seemed to be a power that gathered towards the ancestral dragon. This was the will and power that the ancestral dragon left in the world. It was scattered all over the world, and without anyone guiding it, it wouldn't move at all. Now, the ancestral dragon's true body was like a lamp in the darkness, attracting the power over. Although it was just a small portion and couldn't be compared to when the ancestral dragon was at his peak. When the ancestral dragon was at his peak, he was a peak emperor king and was invincible. Even if it was just a small portion of his strength, it was still extremely terrifying for a god king. As the ancestral dragon continued to stir, the entire hall began to shake and rumbling sounds rang out incessantly. The people outside couldn't see what was going on, but they could see that the entire hall was in an uproar. Both sides were fighting more and more intensely. Even the top quality god artifact started to show signs of instability and couldn't handle the release of such power. I didn't expect that you would really be able to borrow power. But this is the end. Watch as I suppress you in one go. Emperor Tianqi decided not to let Yi Shiwen turn the tables. If Yi Shiwen continued to absorb the ancestral dragon's power, then maybe he would succeed. That would be really terrifying. Although it wouldn't be the ancestral dragon's peak strength, he couldn't use all of the Heaven Awakening world's power either. Both sides were evenly matched, and it all depended on who attacked first. His body appeared, and he opened his mouth and spat out dragon veins. These dragon veins fused into the Heaven Awakening Realms map, causing the Heaven Awakening Realms map to become corporeal and slowly crush down. This map started to grow bigger and bigger. Within this palace, it swelled up, and who knew whether it was tens of thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles. It was like a real world was pressing down. It wasn't a projection, but a real world. Emperor Tianqi's methods were all in Yi Shiwen's hands. His ancestral dragon form started to give off chaotic energy, which swept in all directions. It started to get stronger and stronger, like the entire space was about to collapse from the instability. What is this? Emperor Tianqi sensed the abnormal energy ripples from the ancestral dragon's body. It was actually slowly blocking his heaven awakening world. No, I can't let him succeed. Emperor Tianqi spat out a few more dragon veins to strengthen the heaven awakening world projection. He didn't know what Yi Shiwen was going to do, but his instincts told him that he couldn't let Yi Shiwen succeed. Emperor Tianqi, even I am not confident of taking this move. Since he created it, you are the first person to see him. Haha, take it, chaos. Yi Shiwen hollered. Chapter 2741. Emperor Tianqi, even I don't have full confidence in taking this move. Since he created it, you are the first person to see him. Ha, take it, chaos. Yi Shiwen hollered. The ancestral dragon that Yi Shiwen turned into continued to fly through the chaos and spat out chaos energy. It was as if it wanted to charge into the 9 heavens and reopen the world. Honk! There was a giant explosion, and all the chaos energy around Yi Shiwen turned into a terrifying power current that surged out. Kacha kacha! The Heaven Awakening realm map that Emperor Tianqi manifested started to crack, as if it was being ripped apart by this chaos energy. Impossible, what move is this? Emperor Tianqi's eyes widened because, to him, this was an unbelievable thing. The Heaven Awakened world's power that he summoned couldn't block this power, and started to shatter inch by inch. This was just too unbelievable. He was different from Pure Moon King. Not only did he cultivate for a longer time than Pure Moon King, but he also ruled a huge dynasty. In terms of skills, strength, and foundation, he was much stronger than Pure Moon King. If he summoned normal world power, it would be instantly destroyed by a God King. There wouldn't be any other consequences. A God King's power wasn't a joke. But he had already summoned more than 20% of the Heaven Awakening realm's power, and that was enough to crush one of the 10 God Kings. Who knew that it would start to crack now? What exactly was this move? Could it be that the ancestral dragon had really come back to life? Hong long long! After a series of deafening booms, everyone could only see that the originally extremely sturdy palace was actually exploding at an astonishing speed. Within it, Emperor Tianqi was sent flying at a shocking speed. A supreme quality god artifact had been forcefully destroyed, causing terrifying energy to radiate in all directions. It was an extremely terrifying power. After all, a supreme quality god artifact was basically equivalent to the power of a living god king. The power that this palace had was refined for many years and was comparable to the 10 god kings. If not for that, it wouldn't have been able to trap Yi Shiwen. With the strength of Yi Shiwen's body, a single punch would be enough to smash him into pieces. It was impossible to pose any threat to him. Such a magnificent scene could be imagined. Even the experts of the 8th Army and the Tian clan who were far away could feel the powerful energy shockwave rushing over. Many demigods were unable to defend in time and were directly injured in one breath. Fortunately, they were far enough away. Otherwise, they might have been annihilated. Moreover, this power was mixed with the power of Yi Shiwen's primal chaos explosion. Its tyrannical power was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Emperor Tianqi was flung far away, and his chest was in a bloody mess. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and he still couldn't believe how this move could be so strong. This had exceeded the limit of what a peak God King could have. Even if those old fellows appeared, they would be heavily injured. Amidst the endless energy waves, a figure rushed out. It was none other than Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen looked a bit embarrassed at this moment. A few cracks had appeared on his golden skin, but they were still recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was conceivable that he must have suffered serious injuries when he had withstood this wave of power just now. But compared to him, Yi Shiwen's situation was undoubtedly much better. The power of the explosion is stronger than I expected. As expected, It is too forceful to take it head-on with Tyrant Golden Body. Yi Shiwen smiled and didn't seem to care about all this. The instant the primal chaos exploded, he used Tyrant Golden Body to take the attack head-on. If he hadn't transformed into Beast Ancestor at the last moment and strengthened his body, he would have been heavily injured. Previously, he had been experimenting in the Ancestral Dragon Dao diagram. This was the first time he released this move outside. However, it wasn't perfect yet, and this move was almost indiscriminate. Only with his physical strength could he barely take it. If it was someone else, they would have been blown to death on the spot. This was definitely a taboo-level power. Of course, if this move was perfected, then the situation would be different. This move wasn't something an ordinary person could release. One had to have a deep understanding of the primal chaos law. He also understood it from the Ancestral Dragon's Dao lecture. The Ancestral Dragon was the first dragon race in the world. He was born in the primal chaos and was one of the ancient Khanate life forms. He was nurtured by heaven and earth and was loved by heaven and earth. Therefore, many of his Dao lectures involved the Dao of the primal chaos of heaven and earth. Compared to the other emperors, his Dao was more ancient and even closer to the Dao of heaven and earth. In just a few breaths, he had mostly recovered. Such heavy injuries were just too easy for someone like him who cultivated the Phoenix regeneration technique. At this moment, Emperor Tianqi swallowed a god pill, and his injuries had mostly recovered. His strength had also increased by a lot. He didn't see Emperor Tianqi swallow such a pill before. It was obvious that this pill was really precious, and even he wasn't willing to waste it unless it was a crucial moment. Yi Shiwen, you are amazing. As expected, the human race is loved by the heavens. There are actually so many geniuses like you. You are no weaker than Qin Fong, but that will end today. Emperor Tianqi said coldly. Kongs. In his hand, there was a long sword that emitted a chilling aura. It was a broken sword, a black broken sword. Although it was broken, it contained an unimaginable power. Incomplete Dao artifact. It is actually an incomplete Dao artifact. Yi Shiwen's pupils constricted. If he didn't guess wrongly, this should be the Tianqi Emperor's sword. The sword that the founding ancestor of the Tianqi dynasty used. Along with the death of Emperor Tianqi, it broke and was really famous. That's right. This is the Heavenly Awakening Emperor's sword. With the Heavenly Awakening Emperor's sword in hand, even ordinary 10 great divine kings are my match, let alone you. Junior, go to hell. Emperor Tianqi hollered. He fled from the Tianqi dynasty and was only able to take the Tianqi Emperor's sword with him. Yi Shiwen was also responsible for destroying the Tianqi dynasty, and to him, he was an enemy. Naturally, he had to settle all the old and new debts. Kongs. The sword light pierced through the sky, and a large area of the void instantly collapsed. It was a shocking scene. Just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen would be hacked to death by this sword, they saw that at the same time, a blood-red long sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand and instantly burst out with an astonishing light to meet this sword light. The two of them were like peerless swordsmen. Pung! After a shocking collision, the void shattered. What was more terrifying was that the Tianqi Emperor's swords seemed to have sensed each other's presence. An unprecedentedly strong light exploded from the Tianqi Emperor's sword and created a terrifying energy wave. Even if Yi Shiwen and Emperor Tianqi purposely stayed away from the battlefield, everyone on the battlefield still felt a terrifying pressure pressing down. Many half-gods laid on the ground in fear and didn't dare to move at all. Even Yi Shiwen felt an astonishing, imposing aura pressing down on his body. Even with his current cultivation, he could still feel a kind of terrifying pressure. He understood right away that the weapon spirit had awakened. The Tianqi Emperor's sword's weapon spirit had awakened. At this moment, Emperor Tianqi's face was filled with confusion. Of course, he could tell that the artifact spirit of the Tianqi Emperor's sword had awakened. This was something that had never happened before. When the Tianqi Emperor's sword was passed down to him, it was already broken. His race didn't have someone like Emperor Tianqi, so he couldn't repair it. Many years ago, the Tianqi Emperor's sword's weapon spirit awakened once and saved the Tianqi dynasty from a disaster. But after that, it didn't awaken again. Even he hadn't seen it before. from the legends of his ancestors. He knew that it must have heard its source and couldn't awaken easily. Otherwise, the sword itself might collapse. The damage that year was just too severe. But why did it awaken this time? Even when the Tianqi dynasty was wiped out, the Tianqi emperor's sword didn't awaken. A vague figure appeared on the Tianqi emperor's sword, exuding an indescribable pressure. He just stood there like the incarnation of heaven and earth. He was like an emperor that had reached that level. Damn! Facing such a situation, even Yi Shiwen couldn't help but curse in his heart. Damn, it was rare to see a weapon spirit awaken, and he actually encountered it. The reason why it was hard to provoke an emperor's inheritance was because of this. The weapons left by their invincible ancestors could awaken at any time. They also had many unknown methods and foundations that could destroy enemies at any time. If they went all out, they could even fight against an emperor-level invincible figure. This was why many inheritances had been passed down since ancient times and hadn't been destroyed by the many emperors that came later. If it was just a broken sword, even if its power was stronger than a normal top-quality god weapon, Yi Shiwen would still have a way to deal with it. If one wasn't a true emperor, they wouldn't be able to use all of its power. They might only be able to use 1,000th or even 1/10,000th of its power. But if the weapon spirit awakened, then everything would be different. If the weapon spirit was used to activate the Dao weapon, then it would be able to display terrifying power that was far beyond one's imagination. Chapter 2742. There was another violent roar. The Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand suddenly broke away from Yi Shiwen's control. It flew into the sky and faintly confronted the Tianqi Emperor's sword. A bloody frenzy swept out, forming a hell of Avicii. A figure slowly emerged in the void. It was a young figure standing with his hands behind his back. His ferocious power was monstrous. It was not inferior to the Tianqi Emperor's sword. What's going on? The tool spirit has also awakened? Yi Shiwen was stunned. This was the first time that the tool spirit of the Avicii sword had gotten out of the scope of his control. He could still faintly feel the connection between him and the Avicii sword. Moreover, the Avicii sword was emitting a blood-red light to protect him from the suppression of coercion. However, his many years of sacrificial training hadn't been in vain. However, this situation was completely beyond his control. It made Yi Shiwen feel a little uneasy. That blood-colored figure stepped out step by step, going against the might of the Tianqi Emperor's sword. The space beneath his feet melted, turning into a terrifying sea of blood. What is this? Many people had already been crushed by the waves of power to the point where they could not even stand. Even the God Kings felt a terrifying pressure. This was a suppression from the source. Since they entered the Divine King realm, there might be existences more powerful than them. However, it was absolutely impossible to feel such a feeling. This is a confrontation between two supreme masters. Yi Shiwen suddenly realized. He had always suspected that the Avicii sword was also a supreme Dao tool. However, he did not have too many clues. He could not find too many clues about the Avicii sword. Therefore, he could only guess by himself. Now that he saw the confrontation between the two sides, he immediately confirmed it. He was extremely excited. The reason why the inheritance of the Emperor was so powerful was because they had the means left behind by the Supreme Masters. One of them was such a means. He had the Avicii sword to protect him. In an instant, his status was completely different. The only problem was that he had not received the inheritance related to the Sword of Avicii, so he could not freely activate the true power of the Sword of Avicii. It was not like the inheritance of the Emperor, where the ancestors had left some techniques that outsiders did not know about. Although the Tianyuan mirror was good, and it had grown along with his growth, it was seriously damaged. It could not be compared with the Avicii sword. Soon, the others also recognized that this was a battle between two supreme existences that had passed through the long river of history for countless years. Their hearts were filled with incomparable shock. Even though they knew that it was only the manifestation of a Dao artifact, it was still enough for them to worship it. So, this was Emperor Tianqi's final trump card. What everyone didn't expect was that Yi Shiwen also had a Dao artifact, and it was actually able to unleash such shocking strength. Many people suddenly thought of more things. They were afraid that from now on, Yi Shiwen would become one of the most difficult people to provoke. Although the inheritance of an emperor was terrifying, it was impossible for them to run around with a Dao tool. However, Yi Shiwen could do it. Many people thought that Yi Shiwen had risen to prominence in such a short period of time. Therefore, many people had always suspected that the inheritance he had obtained wasn't as simple as the Hidden Valley. The heritage of the Hidden Valley was enough to nurture a king-level expert. However, it couldn't nurture a heaven-defying evildoer like Yi Shiwen. It turned out that he had really obtained the legacy of an emperor lord. No wonder he was so terrifying. Some of their thoughts were already close to reality, although most of them were just wishful thinking. I didn't expect that you actually didn't die, the Avicii sword spirit said slowly. Umph. You must be really surprised that I didn't die, the Tianqi Emperor's sword spirit said coldly. The two of them seemed to know each other. Such a thought suddenly appeared in everyone's mind. Both of them were Dao artifacts inherited by an emperor lord and had unbelievable power. Could it be that they had fought before? It seemed like they weren't on friendly terms. Although he didn't know which supreme martial artist the Avicii sword belonged to, the Emperor Tianqi, who the Emperor sword belonged to, was indeed famous in the world. Back then, he had also fought against the supreme martial artists of other races. However, battles of that level should have been recorded. Based on this, it wasn't hard to deduce the origin of the Avicii sword, but he just couldn't figure it out. It should even be said that if it was a famous supreme, their Dao artifact should be extremely famous too. You can say that. You have recovered a little after so many years. I thought that you were planning to be a coward and hide in the Dao artifact. I didn't expect that you would dare to come out now, the Avicii sword spirit said indifferently. Humph. If it wasn't for your master attacking at the critical moment back then, how would I end up like this? The remaining half of the sword should have been refined by you, right? The artifact spirit of the Tianqi Emperor sword said coldly. Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The Dao artifact had been destroyed. Such a battle must have been earth-shattering. Back then, the demon summoning banner had been destroyed in the battle because it had involved many emperor lords fighting at the same time. That had led to such a terrifying scene. And the destruction of the Tianqi Emperor sword was actually related to this blood sword. It seemed to involve a grudge from a very long time ago. I've already refined it, so now is the time to devour the other half of your sword body. At that time, I will be invincible among all the Dao artifacts, the Avicii sword spirit said unhurriedly. When everyone heard this, they almost fainted. A Dao artifact devouring a Dao artifact was something they had never heard of before. Since ancient times, those who could reach that step were almost as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Similarly, they didn't have many Dao artifacts with them. There were only a few that could be called Dao artifacts. It was almost impossible for them to devour each other. This was just like a supreme. It might be possible for a supreme to defeat another supreme, but it was impossible for a supreme to devour another supreme. However, there were also attentive people who could tell that something was wrong from the Tianqi Emperor sword's words. The person who had attacked the Tianqi Emperor sword back then, apart from this blood sword, there was also the owner of that blood sword. Many people's eyes lit up. Back then, the Tianqi Emperor's sword had broken after the Second Heaven-defying war. That era was too chaotic. They thought for a long time, but they still couldn't figure out which emperor it belonged to. If there was a supreme helping from the side, it might really be possible to devour half of the sword body. Devour the other half of my sword body. I just don't know if you have such a good appetite, the Tianqi Emperor's sword said coldly. What's so difficult about that? I let you escape that time and slept until now. It's time to put an end to it, the Avicii sword spirit said slowly. Everyone was shocked, especially the people from the Tian clan. They were even more terrified. Everyone could tell that although they had a Dao artifact spirit on their side, it was only half a sword body. In the past, it had suffered a terrifying injury, so it would be difficult for them to contend against the other party. In the current era where the emperor had disappeared, the awakened Dao artifact spirit could be said to be invincible. Although they had to pay a great price every time they awakened, It wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. However, they could still be said to be invincible in the world. Perhaps the only thing that could seriously injure them was the resurrection of a supreme being. Everyone was shocked by the tone of the Avicii's sword spirit. He actually said in front of everyone that he wanted to devour another Tao artifact. It was simply very violent. From this, they could roughly infer some of the original character of the Avicii sword's master. The Tao artifact spirit was born under the influence of its master. Some simply integrated their own spirit into the Tao artifact to form the spirit. The two were simply two sides of the same coin. Where is your master? Where is Hell Lord Avicii? Why don't I see him? Now he is being controlled by a junior. It seems that he has already fallen. The Tianqi Emperor's sword spirit glanced at Yi Shiwen and said. His gaze had the effect of penetrating people's hearts. However, the moment his gaze came into contact with Yi Shiwen, the Mingxin ancient tree in Yi Shiwen's body burst out a burst of amazing light. It directly blocked it and didn't let him see through it. The Tianqi Emperor's sword spirit was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that it would be blocked. He immediately felt a little strange and looked at the Avicii sword spirit. Hell Lord Avicii. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but reveal a bit of shock on his face. It turned out to be him. He was the supreme evil lord who had caused endless terror in the heavens and the myriad world for a long time after the Second War of Resistance against the heavens. Among the many supreme experts, there were the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors who had fought for their race until their death. There were also some people who had brought disaster to the world. They had formed a terrible turmoil which had lasted for countless years and destroyed many worlds. Hell Lord Avicii was undoubtedly such a person. However, there were too few records about him. Although the war of resistance against the heavens had ended, the various races had suffered heavy losses. The remnants of the heaven race had caused chaos, and the myriad world had been in turmoil. Therefore, there was a chaotic scene everywhere. It was unknown how many sects and forces had been exterminated. There were very few ancient books and records that had been passed down from that era. Perhaps only the Colossus like the Dragon Island and the ancient Phoenix world, which had dominated the world for countless years, could have a complete record of that period of time. There were very few legends about Hell Lord Avicii in the Hidden Valley. There were only a few words about him. However, those few words revealed a kind of great terror. He was an evil lord who had brought disaster to the entire era with his own strength. If such a person hadn't suddenly disappeared in the end, it was unknown how many people would have been killed or injured. Devouring the opponent's sword at every turn was very similar to Hell Lord Avicii's style of practicing with the world. This was not surprising. However, there were still many strange things in his heart. He was very clear about how he had obtained the Avicii sword. It was in the blood prison. Could it be that he had practiced with Hell Lord Avicii in the inheritance of the Hidden Valley? This was not impossible. It was also possible that he had concealed his identity to avoid arousing suspicion and avoid the enemies of Hell Lord Avicii in the past. Chapter 2743. After all, if he caused turmoil with his own strength, it was unknown how many people would be hostile towards him. Concealing his identity was also a very normal choice. For a time, Yi Shiwen didn't know how many thoughts had turned in his mind. Countless speculations were constantly filtering in his mind, but there were more and more things that he couldn't understand. Because he could obtain too little information, so he could only rely on his own guesses in many places. He didn't have any solid evidence to confirm his own guesses. At this time, the confrontation between the two sides was constantly intensifying. For a time, thousands of swords sounded between heaven and earth. Each sword chi pressed down like a mountain. Sword chi manifested around the two sides. Completely different swordsmanship was constantly erupting fiercely at this time. This was not deliberately formed, but some of the power that was emitted when the two sides confronted each other had already swept away. Any one of them was almost comparable to the full blow of a peak divine king, and this was just an attack that they emitted casually. One could imagine how terrifying the strength of those peak supreme was. That was the supreme, an invincible existence that was above the world. The supreme was a supreme figure that could stir up the world, bring disaster to the world, and pacify the chaotic world. The two swords that once dominated the world exuded a terrible sword aura that made people shudder, not daring to covet it. Yes, he is dead, Avicii's sword spirit just said faintly. Everyone's mind was like a big bell ringing. An emperor was confirmed to be dead. There was nothing more authentic than his Tao tool's spirit personally confirming it. Although Avicii Hell Lord had not really been born and was very unfamiliar to many people, it did not prevent them from being extremely shocked in their hearts. An unparalleled existence had actually fallen. He had completely fallen. However, at the same time, many people also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, this wasn't the worst situation. Yi Shiwen alone had already made many people restless. If there was a living emperor supporting him in the dark, then many people would probably have to kneel down. They could still fight against Yi Shiwen, but how could they dare to fight against an emperor? Those who could fight at that level were undoubtedly existences of that level. If one didn't achieve Tao, one would be an ant for another day. He also has such a day. What a joke! The artifact spirit of the enlightening emperor sword burst into laughter as if he had vented his anger. It wasn't you who killed him, so what's so funny about it? The artifact spirit of the Avicii sword didn't say anything and just sneered without end. As a weapon spirit, he was not too sad about the death of Hell Lord Avicii. Or perhaps he had already been sad, but no one knew about it. Only Yi Shiwen had vaguely guessed that he hadn't obtained the inheritance of Hell Lord Avicii, as everyone had guessed. If Hell Lord Avicii was still alive, it would be impossible for him to seize the Avicii sword. Now that he'd witnessed the might of the sword of Avicii, he'd already come to a complete understanding. The sword of Avicii was usually in a state of deep slumber, and its might was far from being so terrifying, let alone erupting with might that far surpassed the sword of Avicii in the hands of an exalted imperial monarch. Even if he was already comparable to the 10 great divine kings now, he could still feel insignificant. Compared to those supreme figures that dominated the world, he was still too insignificant. Only when one reached such a level could one be said to be able to dominate the world. The so-called 10 great divine kings dominating the world was just a monkey calling himself king when there was no tiger in the mountain. Compared to the true emperor monarchs that dominated the world, it was nothing. They will eventually fall. Even an emperor monarch can't fight against fate. Those who should fall will still fall. All of them will die. The Tianqi Emperor's sword said coldly. But do you think you'll still be so lucky today? Your master is indeed an incredible person. But with just you alone, I'm afraid you won't be able to get away with it. The sword of Avicii snorted coldly. Even Yi Shiwen and Tianqi Emperor didn't expect that the battle between the two of them would actually lead to a grudge that had existed since ancient times. It seemed like the two of them weren't going to give up so easily. You're only left with half of your body. What right do you have to fight against me? The artifact spirit of the sword of Avicii said faintly. With a flick of his finger, a sword chi shot out like a mountain. The peerless sharpness swept up in midair and blasted towards the artifact spirit of the Tianqi Emperor's sword. Clang! A buzzing sound rang out as a powerful sword chi exploded around the Apocalypse Emperor's sword. The sword light was blocked on the spot, and the collision between the two erupted with a dazzling light. You're too careless? The artifact spirit of the Tianqi Emperor sword said coldly and instantly attacked. His entire body dashed out, and the Tianqi Emperor's sword appeared in his hand. With a clang, a shocking sword light shot out, penetrating the sky and earth. The heavenly Tao laws in the entire battlefield were instantly severed and could no longer be maintained. Everything in the void collapsed. It was just a single sword strike, but it almost caused the world to collapse. This was a terrifying scene that not even the many godly monarchs had been able to create. Is this really the limit of human strength? Is this the power of an imperial monarch after cultivating to the peak? Many people's faces were pale as they asked from the distance. Bang! The beam of sword light that pierced through the heavens and the earth blasted directly in front of the sword of Avicii's artifact spirit. However, the sword of Avicii also appeared in the artifact spirit's hand. It swung out abruptly and clashed with the beam of sword light. Rumble! A terrifying roar rang out, and the blazing sword light actually shattered countless stars. Some of the experts from both sides who were a little closer were directly annihilated. This was an attack that surpassed the level of gods. It was so powerful that it was shocking. The battle between two imperial monarchs could destroy the world. No one could withstand it. Almost all of these people were born after the Qin emperor had attained enlightenment. They had never truly seen the power of imperial monarchs, let alone a battle between experts of that level. Even if it was just the awakening of the artifact spirit, it would still be invincible. They were the most powerful experts in the world. Many godly monarchs paled immediately and were extremely gloomy. Even if they were tied together, it would be useless against such terrifying power. This was especially true for the allied forces of the various races. At this moment, they could deeply understand why they had to kill an ID. If he really succeeded, then it would be a great terror to all the worlds in the universe, and they would all be killed by him. Before a person of that level, numbers were meaningless. Even if they gathered an army, they would not be able to withstand such an attack. They more or less understood what was going on. Yi Shiwen and Emperor Tianqi were the closest and were sent flying by the explosion. Luckily, most of the power was blocked by the artifact spirits, otherwise they would have been heavily injured. That kind of strength was just too strong. Is this their true power? Yi Shiwen was a little shocked. The power that these Dao artifacts used might have belonged to the legendary Supreme Being. He had never come into contact with such a power and had never understood it before. His heart was filled with shock, but at the same time, a raging fighting spirit was ignited. Compared to such a person, he was still too weak. In the past, he had only heard of such a terrifying person, and had only heard of them. He had never actually seen one. Now that he had seen it for himself, he realized that such a person might really be able to kill him with a wave of his hand. Just one sword could easily destroy a world, and one didn't need to worry about the recoil of the world's power. They were invincible and didn't have to worry about anything. This was the true meaning of a supreme emperor. He also wanted to possess such power. He also wanted to possess it. One day, he would stand at the peak of all living beings and break through the heavens to seek enlightenment. Good. The artifact spirit of the Tianqi Emperor sword laughed out loud and waved the broken sword in its hand. Instantly, another earth-shattering sword aura was unleashed. The attack instantly pierced through the vast sky, piercing through the universe and directly landing on the ground of the battlefield. The entire ground shook violently, affecting the entire battlefield. Everyone was shocked by this attack. But this was just one of the strikes. Tianqi Emperor Sword's artifact spirit continued to wave the sword and slashed out numerous sword energies. On the other side, the artifact spirit didn't show any weakness either. Sword light swept out, bringing with it a sky full of blood ocean. It pierced through heaven and earth and shattered the chaos. As both sides clashed, the galaxy collapsed piece by piece. The space was ripped apart inch by inch, and the area of the battle was getting bigger and bigger. It had already affected the battle between the two allied forces. Because they attacked unscrupulously, Tianqi Emperor's sword didn't have any scruples just because the people of the Tian clan were here. In order to kill this old enemy of many years, he also wanted to devour Tianqi Emperor's sword. In that case, not only could he repair this broken sword body, but he could also go one step further and become invincible in the world. Even if he had to pay a huge price for this recovery, it would be enough and it would be worth it. On the other side, Tianqi Emperor's sword's artifact spirit didn't have the slightest scruple because both sides had nothing to do with it. Moreover, even if there was a relationship, Tianqi Emperor's sword's artifact spirit wouldn't have the slightest scruple. Back then, he massacred the world just to prove his Tao. From this, it could be seen what kind of character he had. Boom, boom, boom. They were constantly swept by the aftermath of the battle. Even the well-disciplined armies of both sides began to feel unbearable at this time. There were even signs of collapse. If they were to die on the battlefield, it might not be a big deal. However, how could they remain calm if they were to be swept to death by the aftermath of the battle? Senior, please show mercy. Yi Shiwen quickly transmitted his voice. The 8th Legion was now his subordinates. If the entire legion was annihilated because of the battle between both sides, even he wouldn't be able to explain. Chapter 2744. Senior, please show mercy. The Avicii sword's spiritual sense swept over. Although it didn't turn around, Yi Shiwen could sense that it was looking at him. Although it didn't say much, the Avicii sword's spiritual sense shot out and disappeared into the deeper space, far away from the battlefield. On the other side, the Tianqi Emperor's sword's spiritual sense flew up. It wasn't interested in these mortals and just wanted to kill the Avicii sword's spiritual sense. The grievances between the two of them that had lasted for tens of thousands of years were going to end today. The battle between the two of them exploded in space once more. Sword energy swept tens of thousands of miles, and from afar, one could see it with the naked eye. It pierced through the sky and destroyed the galaxy. Emperor Tianqi, what other methods do you have? Just use them all, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Although he didn't have the Avicii sword and lost his trump card, Emperor Tianqi didn't have any other tricks up his sleeves. The Emperor Tianqi sword wasn't in his hands either. Scoff. All of you will be buried here today, Emperor Tianqi said coldly. To cultivate to such a stage, which one of them wasn't a genius. Even after being killed to such a stage, they still wouldn't lose confidence. What's more, he had a deeper chapter. He turned around and actually flew towards the Heaven Race's base. Where are you going? Yi Shiwen immediately roared, put away the demon flag, and chased after it. Pong! Ping! Pong! Yi Shiwen rampaged through the Tian clan army, and wherever he went, no one could stop him. The golden light was like a mountain, and anyone who bumped into it would die. All of them would die. The Heaven Race army tried to stop Yi Shiwen, but they couldn't. He was like a dragon in human form, sweeping everything in his path and causing blood mist to form. The 8th Legion followed behind Yi Shiwen and continued to kill. The defensive line of the Heavenly Race Coalition army, which was already in a mess due to Yi Shiwen's killing, collapsed continuously. Yi Shiwen charged into the depths of the Heaven Race camp. Although he knew that it was dangerous, he couldn't let Emperor Tianqi go, otherwise, it would be harder to kill him in the future. Moreover, he didn't fear anything. Even without the Avicii sword, his combat strength wouldn't decrease by much. In this realm, he didn't fear anything. Suddenly, a long howl tore through the sky, and then an enormous figure descended from the sky and crushed the ground beneath its feet. This was a golden giant that gave off an extremely dangerous aura. It was invincible and gave off a natural pressure. Golden Titan. Yi Shiwen hadn't expected that he would be able to see the legendary king of the Titan god race. This race had once dominated the world for a long time. They had considered themselves as the god race. However, due to unknown reasons, they rarely appeared in the world. Not to mention the Golden Royal family, they were almost non-existent. Yi Shiwen had once killed a divine lord who only possessed the bloodline of a bronze titan. At that time, Yi Shiwen had fallen into a bitter struggle. However, Yi Shiwen clearly felt the aura of death under the monstrous golden aura of the Golden Titan. This is a zombie! Yi Shiwen's eyes were like torches. He immediately saw that it was a zombie. It didn't seem to be a living creature. It should be a Golden Titan that had once died on this battlefield. Later on, it gave birth to spiritual wisdom by chance and turned into a zombie. Such a situation wasn't that rare among gods. That was because gods were protected by the laws of heaven and earth, so the chances of them turning into zombies was very small. Moreover, for a god king, the chances of them turning into a zombie was so small that it was negligible. But there were some special situations where they could turn into zombies. For example, this battlefield. The environment was extremely dangerous, and the Yin energy covered the sky. It was indeed a good place to turn into a zombie. This Golden Titan rushed towards Yi Shiwen in large strides. He grabbed the thunderbolts in the sky with both of his hands. His left hand transformed into a thunder axe, and his right hand transformed into a shield to protect himself. The thunder axe came crashing down. The power of thunder at the level of a god king came crashing down, shaking the heaven and earth. Originally, these zombies were the most mean and evil existence in the world. It was impossible for them to control the power of extreme yang like the thunder power. Even if they reached the god level, they could resist the power of extreme yang to a certain extent. However, they wouldn't choose to touch it easily. However, this Golden Titan was obviously an exception. This was the innate magical power of the Golden Titan. It was innately not afraid of the thunder power. Instead, it became a boost to its power. With this thunder power, he was invincible on this battlefield. Those evil spirits and zombies were like mice encountering a cat when they encountered this thunder power. They were no match for him at all. However, he didn't expect his tyrannical strength to attract the attention of the Heavenly Clan. He was subdued by the Heavenly Clan. The Heavenly Clan liked to drive the vassals of various clans to take the lead in battles. Their own clansmen were the most precious. Bang! The lightning axe slashed down and stopped 3 feet in front of Yishuan. A blood-colored light blocked in front of him, such that he couldn't break through at all. The recoil force even caused the Golden Titan's body to stagnate slightly. Given the strength of the Golden Titan, there were only a handful of races in the world that could compare to it. However, it was nothing in front of Yishuan. Hong Long! Yishuan attacked aggressively. Blood surged around him, and he punched out. The golden fist energy formed a frenzied wave that struck out. The lightning axe shattered on the spot. Under Yishuan's fist energy, even the lightning in the sky would be sliced apart. If the physical strength of the Golden Titan could be said to be tyrannical, then Yishuan's body would be twice as tyrannical. Anyone who blocks me shall die, Yishuan hollered. If he wanted to catch up to Emperor Tianqi, he couldn't be held back by these people. His fist energy didn't slow down at all. After breaking the lightning axe, it headed towards the chest of the Golden Titan. The Golden Titan hurriedly used the lightning shield to block in front of him. Dang! A deafening roar rang out, like 2 pieces of gold and iron colliding with each other in the air. Kacha kacha! Cracks actually appeared on the shield, and it shattered inch by inch. Then, it instantly turned into powder that filled the sky and drifted with the wind. This Golden Titan was shocked. What kind of amazing fist strength was this? What kind of amazing physical strength was this? Although the Thunder Giant axe and the shield were condensed from the power of thunder, these were not the power of thunder that was casually grabbed from the sky. Instead, they were watered by the Golden Titan's origin. They were no worse than ordinary martial instruments. Coupled with his invincible physical body, he had always been invincible. However, they were blown up by Yishuan's punch. However, he didn't have time to think too much at this time. Yishuan's fist had already crossed the vast sky. He could only stretch out his big hand and slap it down. He was still very confident in his own body to contend against Yishuan. Pung! There was a loud explosion. His hand was pierced by Yishuan's fist, and a giant bloody hole appeared. The terrifying fist energy continued to wreak havoc on his wound. Kong! The Golden Titan was in pain and roared in rage. Everything happened too quickly, and he didn't even have time to think. Yishuan's fist energy was too terrifying. It pierced through the stars and shattered the world. The Golden Titan's body was strong to begin with. After corpse transformation, he became a zombie. Zombies were known for their strong bodies, so one could imagine how terrifying he was. But even then, he was still much weaker in front of Yishuan. This was a human who was even more violent than zombies and Golden Titan. He retreated repeatedly. He suffered a great loss right off the bat, and this made him incomparably terrified. He was already about to step into the realm of the 10 great divine kings, and was already far more tyrannical than ordinary peak divine kings. This was why he dared to come up and stop Yishuan. Originally, he was also curious as to why one of the strongest experts in the Tian clan, Emperor Tianqi of the Tianqi dynasty, would be chased like a stray dog. Even without the Tianqi dynasty, no one dared to underestimate Emperor Tianqi just based on his strength. Now, he finally understood that it wasn't that Emperor Tianqi was weak, but that this human was a monster. He was in pain. Although he was a zombie, he wasn't stupid and wasn't willing to fight Yi Shiwen head-on. Such a monster should be dealt with by someone stronger. He turned around and wanted to escape. However, how could Yi Shiwen let him escape? The stone sword in his hand erupted with blazing rays of light. The best quality divine tool had been revived. Although it was not as fierce as the Avicii sword, its power was still extremely astonishing. Hula! With a slash, sword energy pierced through the clouds and chased after the Golden Titan. The Golden Titan hurriedly turned around, and an astonishing power of thunder erupted from his body, protecting him within it. The power of lightning itself was the most unyielding and purest energy in the world. At the same time, it was also the most violent power. It could be used for both offense and defense. Its offense could destroy everything, and its defense relied on the characteristic of destroying everything, annihilating all attacks. But this time he was totally wrong. Yi Shiwen's sword was much more terrifying than he had expected. The stone energy on the sword light covered everything and even petrified his lightning source. Poochie! The sword light slashed into the Gold Titan's body and a large amount of blood sprayed out. A large hole appeared in the Gold Titan's chest, causing bone fragments to fly out. The Golden Titan cried out in pain, but he didn't dare to stay for long. He sensed how terrifying Yi Shiwen was, and he wasn't someone he could compare to. Prung! Another sword slashed down. Yi Shiwen didn't give him a chance to escape at all. The Golden Titan was smashed by the sword and turned into a rain of blood that filled the sky. It still wanted to reassemble itself in mid-air, but it was immediately swallowed by the demon summoning banner. Yi Shiwen kept the flag and flew towards the depths of the Heaven Race base. Chapter 2745. All of this took a long time to describe, but in reality, victory and defeat were decided in just a few moves. That Golden Titan already had 1 foot in the 10 great divine kings level of battle prowess, but it did not cross over. It did not cross over in the end. Even if he did, he might not be Yi Shiwen's match, let alone before he even stepped in. He was defeated by Yi Shiwen in just a moment. Seeing that even the Gold Titan was defeated by Yi Shiwen, the others couldn't stop Yi Shiwen at all. In the depths of the stars in the distance, the battle between 2 supreme beings spanned hundreds of thousands of miles. Sword energy suppressed everything. Since ancient times, such a battle was rare. On the battlefield, the experts of the 8th Legion rode their horses and followed Yi Shiwen into the Tian clan base. With Yi Shiwen taking the lead, these people were simply invincible and invincible. Yi Shiwen would be the first to break through the defensive line, and the rest of them only needed to sweep through. The closer they got to the depths of the Tian clan's base, the more tyrannical the resistance they encountered. There were many of them, and they fought to the point of madness, especially when God Kings appeared one after another. Not only were there from the Tian clan, there were also experts from the various clans, as well as the troops they had gathered from the battlefield. This was a battle of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The experts, who were usually awe-inspiring and domineering, could only turn into corpses and fall at this moment, adding a bit of blood to this already extremely terrifying battlefield. At this moment, no one had the time to care about the battle between the supreme Tao treasures in the sky. Their eyes were red from killing. Moreover, in such a chaotic situation, apart from Yi Shiwen, no one else could see what was going on. In the sky and on the ground, corpses fell one after another. Who knew how many people had died in the battle between the two sides? Yi Shiwen was like a great devil king. He was rampaging through thousands of soldiers and horses. He was invincible. Many people weren't killed by him. Instead, they were knocked to death by him. Especially to chase after Emperor Tianqi, his speed was raised to the extreme. Along with the strength of his body, one could imagine how terrifying he was. Kill every single one of these strange races. A loud roar spread out from the Sky Race Alliance army. A person jumped out from within. He was invincible, and no one was his match. The attack he had casually launched back then was actually able to shatter mountains and rivers, and cause rivers to flow in reverse. He punched out with a force that could devour mountains and rivers. The blazing light was like a raging wave beating against the shore. Many experts of the Allied forces who couldn't dodge in time were killed alive. Even their mounts were killed. The attacks from the battle fortresses couldn't do anything to him. They fell on his body like raindrops and were all shattered. "I'll fight you." Suddenly, a godly king charged out from the Allied army and appeared in front of the celestial race godly king. This was a dragon king of the dragon race. He was extremely strong. Although he wasn't a golden dragon king, he was still a significant figure in the dragon race. With the talent and strength of the dragon clan, they were basically invincible in the same realm. He let out a deafening roar, causing the entire battlefield to tremble. His blood and chi surged into the heavens. He indeed had the qualifications to be arrogant. "You're courting death. You want to go against me with just you?" This Tian clan divine king did not hold back at all when facing this dragon king. With a punch, the terrifying fist energy twisted into a pillar of air and bombarded the dragon king's body. Bang! The dragon king was caught off guard and was immediately sent flying. A huge bloody hole appeared on his chest. He had suffered a great loss in this exchange. Peak divine king. The dragon king immediately roared in anger. He knew that he had suffered a great loss. This Tian clan divine king did not use his full strength at all. He was deceiving people and deceiving them. Now that he had made a move, he had severely injured him. "My lord!" Immediately, hundreds of divine dragons rushed out from the army and directly flew towards the dragon king. Many of them were dragon subspecies. However, without exception, the dragon race's bloodline was synonymous with tyrannical power. Although there weren't many of them, they were the backbone of the entire 8th Legion. All of them had the strength of deities and above. Only the Dragon Island could send out so many tyrannical power in one go. "It's best if all of you come to die. I haven't eaten dragon meat for a long time." "Ha!" This Tian clan divine king laughed out loud. He formed a huge hand and suddenly slapped out. Bang! 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 These divine dragons that came to help were all slapped to death. One divine dragon after another was slapped to death. These divine dragons at the level of gods were nothing in front of this powerful pinnacle, God King. This was the crushing power of the upper echelons. For the Tian clan to be able to stand tall in this world for countless years, no one knew how much power they had. It was simply impossible to resist. Not only were their physical bodies slapped into meat paste, even their divine weapons were crushed in an instant. Their primordial spirits were destroyed. It was simply too horrible to look at. The experts of the Tian clan were already ridiculously strong in the same realm. Moreover, it was a crushing power in terms of cultivation level. It was even more so. It was almost unstoppable. Seeing the elites of his clan being slapped to death one after another in order to save him, the Dragon King also went crazy. He roared in anger. His whole body exploded with a shocking flame, burning in all directions. It was dazzling, and the blazing light swept in all directions. He roared and transformed into his original body. In an instant, the sky and earth split apart. He directly attacked the Divine King of the Tian clan. "You are courting death." The Divine King of the Tian clan did not take it seriously. He directly blocked all the attacks of the Dragon King, making it impossible for him to advance an inch. He was extremely strong. Damn it! The Dragon King saw that his attack was completely blocked, and he could not help but roar in anger. This kind of strength was too shocking. I have never eaten Dragon King level dragon meat before. "Ah!" The Divine King of the Tian clan roared. "From now on, you have to remember our names. In our Tian clan, there is not only D and I. My name is Yi Wuxiang." Yi Wuxiang's punch directly hit the chest of the Dragon King. The Dragon King was already injured. Now, the Dragon King was even more injured. All of a sudden, the Dragon King's body was torn into pieces. One could imagine how terrifying Yi Wuxiang's punch was. It was simply invincible. Even the Dragon King of the Dragon Clan could not block it. "Fight it out with him." The eyes of the experts of the Dragon tribe turned red. They were the old subordinates of the Dragon King, and many of them were the descendants of the Dragon King. Now that they saw their ancestor being torn apart on the spot, they couldn't help but be angry. In the sky, the Dragon King's physical body began to reconstruct rapidly. His aura was much weaker. Although he was an immortal divine king, it was not easy for him to recover from such a serious injury. However, Yi Wuxiang did not give the Dragon King any chance to breathe and directly caught up with him. I said that I want to eat dragon meat today. No one can stop me. Yi Wuxiang's eyes were cold and ruthless. He directly attacked again. That Dragon King was in despair. If he was hit, then even an undying God King's body wouldn't be able to protect him. The other God Kings were fighting in other places and couldn't come over to help him. Really? I want to see who you are. Suddenly, a large hand descended from the sky, and it formed an enormous cage of the sky that grabbed fiercely at Yi Wuxiang. Just as Yi Wuxiang was about to shatter this Dragon King again and kill it directly, he suddenly felt a sense of extreme danger. It rushed from the soles of his feet to his head, causing him to move instinctively in an instant. His figure shifted thousands of miles to the side, and only then did he barely manage to escape the grasp of this huge hand. Only now did he have time to raise his head. He saw a human race teen standing with his hands behind his back. He was heading back from the Heaven Race's base. Who else could it be other than Yi Shiwen? He went too deep into the Heaven Race's base. Although he was fine, he was separated from the rest. In the end, he chose to return. Although it was important to chase after Emperor Tianqi, he couldn't just watch as his subordinates died. He didn't take it to heart. Anyway, the Heaven Race wouldn't be able to escape today, and Emperor Tianqi would definitely die. It was just a matter of killing him earlier or later. Yi Wuxiang wasn't old, but he was actually a peak God King. Although he was far weaker than him, he couldn't be underestimated. At most, he cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years. No wonder he was so arrogant. You are Yi Shiwen? With just a glance, this person recognized Yi Shiwen. Perhaps those old Tian clan experts would not pay too much attention to Yi Shiwen. However, he was very concerned about Yi Shiwen. As long as it was a famous young expert in the myriad heavens, he would pay attention to them. Although Yi Shiwen hadn't risen for a long time, the momentum of his rise was very fierce. So, he couldn't help but pay attention to him. Based on the news he had just received, Yi Shiwen should have just become a king. How could he be so strong? He even felt a sense of extreme danger in his heart. This didn't match the intel he had received at all. Right, I didn't expect you to have heard of my name. But since you have heard of my name, then why don't you surrender? Yi Shiwen burst out laughing. Surrender? Just you? Yi Wuxiang was furious. To him, this was a huge humiliation. He actually wanted him to surrender. Eat my fist first. Yi Wuxiang spat out a mouthful of essence qi and punched it. In an instant, a terrifying beam of light was formed, piercing through the heavens and the earth. This was his true strength. He didn't even bring out this kind of strength when he was dealing with the Dragon King. Chapter 2746. Yi Wuxiang dared to compare himself with Nid. He was indeed not an ordinary person. If he was given time to develop, it would only be a matter of time before he entered the 10 great divine kings realm. He might even go one step further and reach the absolute peak realm. Because of this, Yi Shiwen wanted to kill him even more. Yi Shiwen stood motionless in the face of Yi Wuxiang's attack. He allowed this attack to fall with the momentum of collapsing the sky. Suddenly, a burst of blazing light erupted from Yi Shiwen's body, splitting the sky and earth. It turned into a shocking sword intent and instantly destroyed Yi Wuxiang's attack. It was the Dominator's sword intent. With Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, he could use the Dominator's sword intent very easily. What move is this? Dominator's sword intent. It's the Dominator's sword intent. Yi Wuxiang seemed to recognize Yi Shiwen's move immediately. It was the Dominator's sword intent. In the Celestial clan, the invincible Dominator Emperor was also famous for a time. He also left behind a lineage of inheritance in the remaining Celestial clan. They had fought with each other many times, so he easily recognized the origin of Yi Shiwen's move. It was the Dominator's sword intent of the Celestial Clan Emperor. His punches continued to shatter, and scatter in all directions. At this moment, Yishuan finally moved. He slashed with his sword. The sword light pierced through the sky and swept thousands of miles. There was no end to it, as if it was going to pierce through the entire world. Behind Yi Shiwen, a tyrannical figure appeared. It was the shadow of the Celestial Clan Emperor. This was proof that he had cultivated the Dominator's sword intent to the extreme. Under Yi Shiwen's sword, the protective aura around Yi Wushang's body collapsed. He was no match for Yi Wushang. It completely suppressed Yi Wushang. So you secretly learned the Celestial Clan Emperor's unique skill. Yi Wushang sneered. No wonder you're so arrogant. But you're not a member of the Celestial Clan. It's useless even if you learn it. At this moment, Yi Wushang's body began to emit blazing rays of light. He roared, I'll let you see the pure Tian clan's absolute art, supreme sovereign solution. He spat out a mouthful of essence chi and formed a large array. In an instant, it began to absorb a strong power from the heavens and the myriad realms. It was the remaining power of an emperor. It was much stronger than the Devil Eagle King, who was at the same realm. Even the Golden Titan that Yi Shiwen had encountered before was weaker than Yi Wushang. Yi Wushang's entire body was more than twice as tall. His entire body emitted a kind of blazing light, like a blazing sun in the sky. To be able to die under the supreme sovereign solution, you can consider yourself lucky, Yi Wushang said coldly. His power had increased by more than a level, and it was almost comparable to the level of the 10 great divine kings. This was an extremely impressive great technique that could instantly raise one's power by an entire level. Supreme Emperor Solution? Could it be the technique created by the so-called Time Lord? Yi Shiwen was slightly stunned. Supreme Emperor Solution? The faces of the older generation in the allied forces of many clans changed drastically. Obviously, they recalled a legend from a distant era. This technique has reappeared in the world after all? Yes, it's an invincible Tian clan great emperor who is known to be able to freely shuttle between the past and the future. Yes, it's rumored that he comprehended the law of time to an absolute peak. He dared to use the name time. He was almost the top emperor of the Tian clan in the past. In order to besiege and kill him, several emperor lords of our allied forces joined hands to deceive the heavenly secrets and cut off the past and the future. Only then, they finally caught him and besieged him to death. Even so, he still dragged an emperor lord to his death. It's simply terrifying. Yes, that lineage should have been uprooted after that. Why is there still an inheritance at this time? Many people said in confusion. Yes, this is the supreme emperor solution of the Time Lord, Yi Wushang said faintly. The corners of his mouth were raised, and there was a hint of inexplicable pride. At this moment, he seemed to be the reincarnation of the Time Lord, looking down on everyone. The blazing light on his body turned into a divine kingdom, suppressing the world. According to the legends, this supreme emperor solution can capture your future self from the long river of time and share your future strength with it. It can enhance your strength without any side effects. I don't know how much of its essence you have learned. Yi Shiwen sneered. This unique technique was indeed invincible in the world. It could allow the Time Lord to fight against several Emperor Lords, shocking the world. However, the power of time was too mysterious. The Time Lord could display his full strength because he used the body of an Emperor Lord to travel between the past and the future. If an ordinary divine king dared to do so, they would be torn into pieces by the power of time. It's enough to kill you, Yi Wushang sneered. He spat out a mouthful of essence energy and then punched out. Suddenly, an earth-shattering light beam blasted out and pierced through the vast sky. It formed a momentum that blotted out the sky and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Insignificant tricks. Even if you use the Supreme Emperor solution, what can you do? Yi Shiwen sneered. With the gap in strength, it's useless to play such tricks. Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand and suddenly grabbed. It was like a cage that imprisoned the sky. In an instant, everything was caught in his hand. He directly grabbed Yi Wuxiang's attack in his hand and annihilated it, disappearing without a trace. Die! Yi Wuxiang's eyes burst with brilliance. He stepped on the universe and then blasted out another punch. It was extremely mysterious and directly struck out in the trajectory of the Great Path. Compared to before, his strength had increased by more than just a little bit. This punch tore the sky apart and was unpredictable. Clang! Yi Shiwen casually raised his hand to block and completely blocked his attack. He was not a match for him at all. Die! Yi Wuxiang continued to attack Yi Shiwen with one punch after another. Yi Shiwen seemed to be only able to resist one punch at a time. He just kept raising his hands to block all of Yi Wuxiang's attacks. Although Yi Wuxiang couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen, it seemed that Yi Shiwen was being suppressed from a distance. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. Bang! 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 The battle was still going on fiercely. It was already unimaginably tragic. However, no one dared to disturb the two people in the middle of the battlefield. A battle of that level was not something they could intervene in. Outsiders only saw that Yi Wuxiang had completely gained the upper hand and suppressed Yi Shiwen. However, he himself was getting more and more frightened as he fought, because only he knew that no matter what kind of attack he used, he couldn't really shake Yi Shiwen's defense. This in itself meant the biggest problem. I see. I finally understand the Supreme Emperor solution a little, Yi Shiwen suddenly said with a smile. He was defending all the way just now because he wanted to understand some of the mysteries of the Supreme Emperor solution. It was naturally impossible to achieve this by ordinary means. After all, this was a secret technique of the Emperor level. In the past, the Time Heaven Lord used to rely on the Supreme Emperor solution to defeat everyone in the world. However, he had that mysterious space, so he could actually analyze some of it. This was even more astonishing than when he had analyzed the ruler's sword technique. In any case, the ruler's sword technique had revealed itself. However, the Supreme Emperor's solution wasn't. The Supreme Emperor's solution was used on Yi Wuxiang's body. However, this was only a preliminary understanding. He would need to make continuous deductions if he wanted to completely analyze it. However, he had already used up all the wealth he had plundered from killing powerful enemies in such a short period of time. In fact, he had stopped because he had exhausted all his wealth. The difficulty of analyzing the Supreme Emperor's solution was much higher than that of the ruler's sword technique. In fact, it wasn't even at the same level of difficulty. It wasn't because the Supreme Emperor's solution was much stronger than the ruler's sword technique. Instead, it was because the contents of the two techniques were completely different. The ruler's sword technique started with the Sword Tao Law. It was relatively easy. However, it was easy to learn but difficult to master. The Supreme Emperor's solution was different because it involved the extremely profound time law. It belonged to the category that was difficult to learn but difficult to master. If Yi Shiwen hadn't already had a certain understanding of the time law, he wouldn't have been able to understand even a little bit of it. Of course, this was only relative. If he didn't have the help of the mysterious space, he would have comprehended the Supreme Emperor's solution by himself. Perhaps he would have needed time to slowly comprehend it, just like the others. Yi Wuxiang must have spent tens of thousands of years to master the Supreme Emperor's solution. However, now that he had a preliminary understanding of it, he could use time to slowly deduce the rest. He didn't need to continue to endure. Humph, the game's over. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. His whole body spewed out sword energy. His aura was getting stronger and stronger. In fact, it had completely surpassed his previous aura. The sword energy instantly condensed into a huge sword in the air. Then, it suddenly slashed down towards Yi Wuxiang. How is this possible? Yi Wuxiang finally started to feel shocked. However, it was too late. Damn it! How can this be? I'm going all out. He had already felt a little bit of danger. However, Yi Shiwen's sword had already slashed down. He didn't have any time to resist at all. The sword energy solidified the air. It made him feel suffocated. He roared and blasted out a punch. He tried to resist Yi Shiwen's sword energy. Bang! Yi Shiwen's sword energy crushed down. In an instant, all of his defenses collapsed. The punch he threw out in anger was completely shattered, and the sword light slashed on his body, instantly sending him flying. Half of his body was cut off by the sword light, and his primordial spirit was almost destroyed. Yi Wuxiang screamed again and again. He kept retreating. He dragged half of his body and fled towards the depths of the celestial race's base. This blow had seriously injured him, and he had no way to resist it at all. It had also made him scared out of his wits and almost scared to death by Yi Shiwen. Chapter 2747. He had never thought that Yi Shiwen would be strong to this extent. With his strength, after stimulating the supreme sovereign solution, his strength had skyrocketed. He even dared to challenge the 10 great divine kings level experts. In the end, he didn't expect that he would suffer a loss at Yi Shiwen's side. Moreover, it was a big loss. He dragged half of his body and fled in. He finally understood why Emperor Tianqi would flee like a dog. Before this, he mocked Emperor Tianqi for being old and actually being killed by an outsider. Along with the destruction of Tianqi dynasty, he looked down on him even more. Now, he understood that it wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that this human was too cruel. Emperor Tianqi, you dare to harm me? His loud roar spread across the entire battlefield. To him, he was tricked by Emperor Tianqi. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to face a monster like Yi Shiwen. You want to leave? Stay. Yi Shiwen stepped out majestically like an emperor. His hand suddenly stretched out and directly grabbed towards Yi Wuxiang. Emperor Tianqi, you actually let him come. If you spoil the plan of the race, do you think you can live? Suddenly, an old voice spread out from the heaven race base. An old voice shook heaven and earth and spread out across the battlefield. Pung! Yi Shiwen's big hand fiercely slammed on the ground. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. A part of the battlefield collapsed. However, Yi Wuxiang was grabbed by a mass of golden light at the crucial moment and escaped Yi Shiwen's fatal blow. Moreover, under this ball of golden light, Yi Wuxiang's seemingly serious injuries were already mostly healed in a short period of time. At that moment, 2 people charged out from the golden light. One of them was Emperor Tianqi, and the other was a black-clothed old man. He stood with his hands behind his back and gave off an invincible aura. He was even stronger than Emperor Tianqi, another one of the 10 God King level experts. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly. Another one who was here to die. There weren't many experts of such a level in the heaven race. Even if all of them gathered here, there wouldn't be many of them. Not to mention that this was just a base. In a situation where the space was sealed, they would at most have a few of them. But now, 2 of them had appeared at the same time. In addition to the Gold Titan, Yi Wuxiang and the others, he could roughly guess that he had already killed his way to the core area of the Tian clan base. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many experts to appear one after another. In the sky, the war fortresses displayed their might one after another, releasing terrifying attacks. Row after row of attacks swept down, plowing through the entire Tian clan base like a plow, wiping out countless Tian clans. He is just a junior at king-ranked realm, and you are actually in such a sorry state. You have thrown the face of our heaven race. The black-clothed old man looked at Emperor Tianqi and Yi Wuxiang and said. Yi Wuxiang was still all right. He knew how terrifying this old man was. In the heaven race, he was an extremely strong person. With his current status, he couldn't compare to this old man at all. However, Emperor Tianqi was different. He once led a dynasty and was invincible. Now, he was being humiliated by this black-clothed old man. To him, this was intolerable. His complexion alternated between green and white. He then looked at Yi Shiwen and revealed a sneer. He had personally fought against Yi Shiwen, so he was very clear about how terrifying Yi Shiwen was. This black-clothed old man's name had shaken the world. It was unknown how many years he had been famous. However, how could it be so easy to take down Yi Shiwen? When the time came, he would know how wrong he had been. Who are you? I don't kill nameless people, Yi Shiwen said loudly. This black-clothed old man wasn't simple either. He was probably one of the 10 God Kings. However, he wasn't afraid. It was as if such a battle was nothing to him. King Tianni, the black-clothed old man said coldly. What, he is the King Tianni? When the Alliance army heard this name, they started to boil. This name was just too famous, and they had all heard of it before. Didn't the rumors say that he had died? Could it be that the Heaven race released the news to confuse the other races? Someone couldn't help but say. Even more people trembled in fear. According to this calculation, it was unknown just how many experts were hidden within the Tian clan that should have already fallen. Just like this King Tianni, if Yishuan didn't kill him to this step and appear personally, who would believe that he was still alive? They all said that you were already dead. Looks like the rumors aren't trustworthy. I didn't expect that I would actually be able to meet someone from tens of millions of years ago. The remnants of the Heaven race are really scheming. Yishuan smiled coldly. He recalled the information about the King Tianni. After all, no matter if it was the experts of the Heaven race or the other races, it was extremely rare for them to reach this stage. Only a small number of people could reach this stage. Just like the 10 great god kings in the universe, the speed of replacement was really slow. Although it had been 10 million years, it was not a long time for this kind of experts to replace each other. At most, it could only be said to be from the previous generation, or at most, the previous 2 generations. However, he didn't know much. After all, everyone treated him as a dead person, so they wouldn't pay too much attention. At most, they would pay a little attention to the information. In your Alliance army, there are many people who faked their deaths and escaped, but the 2 of you actually left them here. If they really come into contact with the rebellious emperor and ruin the plan of the race, how will you bear the responsibility? The King Tianni looked at Emperor Tianchi and sneered. Although he didn't lead a dynasty, as a veteran of the 10 great god kings, his position in the Heaven race was higher than the 2 of them. At this moment, he naturally didn't care and treated them as juniors to teach them a lesson. The juniors are really useless now. Is the illustrious reputation of our Heaven race going to be ruined in your hands? The King Tianni still said fiercely. You say that they are useless, but I think you are the same. Yishuan laughed out loud and attacked first. His hand grabbed out and turned into a seal in the sky. It flew out and smashed towards the King Tianni. It even enveloped the 3 of them, wanting to defeat the 3 of them in one go. Only Yishuan had such domineering aura. If it was another 10 great god kings, they would definitely choose to fight steadily. Be it the King Tianni or Emperor Tianchi, they were all experts of the 10 great god kings level. Even Yi Wuxiang had the strength to threaten the 10 great god kings level. If they fought head-on, they might be killed by the 3 of them. However, Yishuan didn't care at all. He wanted to take this chance to kill all 3 of them. How dare you? You don't know how high the sky is. The King Tianni roared. No one knew whether he was saying that Yishuan dared to attack him or that Yishuan dared to attack the 3 of them at the same time. Perhaps it was both. He instantly attacked and grabbed in the air. He grabbed out a yin and yang pattern. The black and white represented the 2 completely different powers of yin and yang. At this moment, they were perfectly intertwined. A further fusion would be chaos. That kind of power would be even more terrifying. He had achieved his current position and was invincible because of his understanding of the yin and yang laws. This yin and yang pattern turned into a kingdom of yin and yang in the sky, bringing with it a series of violent roars. Bang! Yishuan's sky-flipping seal smashed onto the yin and yang pattern, setting off a shocking wave. The blazing light exploded violently. The sky shook and the earth trembled. The entire universe seemed like it was going to be completely turned into ashes by this attack. In everyone's eyes, the yin and yang pattern actually collapsed inch by inch. It was smashed by Yishuan's sky-flipping seal and shattered. Immediately after, Yishuan's sky-flipping seal didn't lose its momentum and directly attacked the King Tianni. The King Tianni hadn't reacted yet because he didn't expect that his attack would be so easily broken by Yishuan. Yishuan even took the opportunity to attack. Clang! A sword chi soared into the sky and burst out a dazzling light. It pierced through the sky and attacked Yishuan's sky-flipping seal. Rumble! The intense collision continued. The sky-flipping seal collided with the shocking sword intent and destroyed each other. At the crucial moment, Emperor Tianqi made a move. The King Tianyi was caught off guard and was about to suffer a huge loss. However, he had suffered a huge loss from Yi Shiwen before. Hence, he made a move at the crucial moment and saved the King Tianyi. Otherwise, if he was hit just now, even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. A fall into the pit, a gain in one's wit. At this moment, he was naturally much wiser. Although he had no choice but to come out because Yi Shiwen had already killed his way here, he still had to be careful. Although he was extremely angry at the King Tianyi's sarcasm, he still knew that he couldn't have internal strife at this moment. Otherwise, he would really be finished. At this moment, the King Tianyi completely reacted. His expression was extremely ugly. He was actually defeated in just one clash. If not for Emperor Tianqi making a move in time, he would definitely suffer a huge loss. He had just taught Emperor Tianqi a lesson and viciously humiliated this junior that he didn't like. Now, he had to rely on Emperor Tianqi to save him. This was simply too embarrassing. However, he also knew that this wasn't the time to talk about this. This person in front of him was able to chase after Emperor Tianqi and easily defeat Yi Wuxiang, who was a rising star in his race. This meant that he wasn't simple. This time, he definitely wouldn't underestimate Yi Shiwen anymore. I was ambushed by you just now. This time, I want you to die. The heaven and earth sovereign's eyes suddenly snapped open, and he instantly attacked, executing a set of destructive saber techniques as he swung his saber. Chapter 2748. The saber radiance was shocking. Combined with the yin and yang immortal saber in the yin-yang king's hand, it was even more powerful. The saber radiance swept out like a storm. It was unknown how many stars have been destroyed by this saber radiance alone. The power of yin and yang transformed from the saber radiance set off a yin and yang storm. It slashed down directly towards Yi Shiwen. The yin-yang king's qi and blood were surging, making a thunderous sound. His eyes were like the stars in the sky. In the distance, many people could not help but gasp. The yin-yang king was indeed an old man who had dominated the world for countless years. His strength was unprecedented. In the face of such an attack, Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all. He roared and clenched his fist. Then he suddenly punched out. He actually used his body to resist the opponent's yin and yang immortal saber. "You're courting death." The yin-yang king sneered, as if he could see Yi Shiwen being split in half by his yin and yang immortal saber. Bang! A terrifying collision occurred, forming an unprecedented energy frenzy that swept in all directions. A shocking sound shook the world. People could not help but feel as if the world was about to be destroyed. However, at this time, no one paid attention. Everyone was watching the collision nervously. It was completely different from what everyone had expected. Yi Shiwen's arm was not cut off by the yin-yang king's yin and yang immortal saber. Instead, he was directly cut in half. There was not even a scar. Only a pale white spot appeared between his finger bones. From afar, it looked like two pieces of gold and iron had collided. Yi Shiwen had completely withstood this earth-shattering saber attack. Buzz! The yin-yang king felt a terrifying force from the yin and yang immortal saber directly acting on his body through the body of the saber. A series of buzzing sounds erupted, almost causing the yin and yang immortal saber to fall out of his hand. Under such circumstances, he forcibly suppressed the majestic force. He concentrated all the spiritual power in his body on the yin and yang immortal saber and poured it into it. The saber aura swept across and penetrated the entire void. He was about to kill Yi Shiwen. He didn't retreat at this time. Instead, he launched a counterattack in an instant. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. He was indeed ruthless and had rich combat experience. The power of the heavens in the sky also transformed into tens of thousands of experts who were invincible with the saber. These were the saber users he had defeated before. At this moment, their essence, qi, and spirit had been revived, and they rushed over like a magnificent army. 6 paths of reincarnation fist, beast path. Yi Shiwen roared. His fist energy twisted and turned into the 6 paths of reincarnation, spinning continuously. Huge ferocious beasts and divine beasts rushed out from the 6 paths of reincarnation, sweeping towards the swordsman that filled the sky. Looking from above, it was as if 2 waves had collided in the sky. In an instant, countless lives were drowned. However, these were not real lives. On the contrary, it was a battle between the fist intent and the blade intent of both sides. In fact, the great daos of both sides were completely open at this moment, crushing each other. Bang! There was another loud noise. A huge burst of light burst out from the gaps of Yi Shiwen's fingers. The light pierced through the sky and completely killed the saber users that were formed by the blade intent in front of him. Then, it blasted on the yin and yang immortal saber. There was a violent wave, and even a few cracks appeared on the yin and yang immortal saber. The sword intent of the yin and yang immortal king was pierced, and the yin and yang immortal saber was injured. It directly hurt his foundation. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. He had suffered a great loss in this attack. Yin and yang king, you're just so. You've been famous for so many years. What a joke! Yi Shiwen sneered. He grabbed towards the sky with his big hand and turned into a shocking sword aura. It pierced through the sky and directly shot into the endless space. The Yin and Yang King was so furious that he nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. He was so arrogant that he even dared to scold Emperor Tianqi, who was at the same realm as him. He had never suffered such a huge loss, especially after he cultivated to this realm. There was no one who dared to scold him anymore. If it was just his opponent's final struggle, he wouldn't care. However, he was beaten up badly by Yi Shiwen and suffered a huge loss. He felt really depressed. Everyone attacked together. This person is fierce, so let's work together to take him down. We can't let him spoil our plan. At this moment, the Yin and Yang King didn't care about the pride in his heart anymore. Yi Shiwen had beaten him so badly that he had lost all that pride. Emperor Tianqi's heart shook, and he finally vented his anger. Now, he understood that Yi Shiwen was just so terrifyingly strong. However, he was confident that with the two of them working together, it wouldn't be difficult for them to deal with Yi Shiwen. On the other side, Yi Wuxiang had just consumed a god pill and recovered. He even used the Supreme Emperor solution and wanted to fight to the death with Yi Shiwen. There were even many experts of the Tian clan who stood up, wanting to stop Yi Shiwen. Many of them were god kings, and Yi Shiwen had already killed his way into the core area. If he was allowed to continue advancing, then the Tian clan's great cause would be over. A powerful Tian clan god king directly flew out and took the lead to attack Yi Shiwen. Immediately after, the other Tian clan experts also rushed out. At this time, if they could stop Yi Shiwen for a moment, they would have a moment more hope. Fight to the death. Just you bunch of useless fish and prawns? Yi Shiwen sneered. He took a step forward, and his figure instantly transformed into thousands and thousands of figures. It was impossible to distinguish where he was attacking. Kong! 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 Yi Shiwen's figures turned into powerful sword chis in midair and directly swept out, slashing towards the Tian clan experts who were pouncing over. Pooh! 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 Yi Shiwen's sword chi was incomparably sharp, directly killing these Tian clan experts. Although those Tian clan experts tried their best to stop him, in front of Yi Shiwen, it was nothing at all, and they were killed in minutes. Ah! Blood-curdling screams lingered in the ears as these experts exploded one after another. Their souls were annihilated in an instant. Countless wealth exploded and fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. Although the wealth of each of these experts wasn't much for Yi Shiwen at present, but every little bit makes a mickle. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had just comprehended the Supreme Emperor solution and had suddenly become extremely poor. So, he needed these wealth to make up for his deficit. Whether it was the mysterious space or the enlightening mind ancient tree, they both consumed a huge amount of resources. These were closely related to Yi Shiwen's growth and were exactly what he needed. The Heaven Race experts were furious. They had always been the ones who bullied others. Although they were driven to a corner by the various races in the heavens, they had never been defeated in the competition of the same realm. Now, Yi Shiwen, whose realm was far lower than theirs, was acting fiercely in front of them. Tears of blood flowed out of their eyes. When everyone reacted, Yi Shiwen had already rushed in front of Yi Wuxiang. At this time, although his injuries were almost recovered, he was still the weakest among the three. Yi Shiwen had to deal with these three people as soon as possible. So, he had to start from this weak point first. Damn, you dare to look down on me? Yi Wuxiang immediately reacted. He quickly understood that Yi Shiwen was the first to find him. Yi Shiwen clearly regarded him as a soft persimmon. However, he couldn't distinguish between them. He had suffered a big loss in front of Yi Shiwen. At this time, he could only be furious and blasted a punch towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! His fist momentum was like a tide. It directly blasted 3 inches in front of Yi Shiwen. It was blocked by a blood wall. The attack couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. Overturning the sky seal. Suppress. Yi Shiwen shouted. His palm turned over and turned into the overturning the sky seal. It directly smashed down. Yi Wuxiang hollered in rage and struggled. He felt an overwhelming power descend upon him and was about to smash him into pieces. He continued to attack again and again to try to break the overturning the sky seal. However, it was useless. He wasn't Yi Shiwen's match at all, and he was cleanly broken. The speed was even faster than before. Hong! A huge mushroom cloud dispersed as scorching light shrouded the sky. With the terrifying sound of the collision, Yi Wuxiang was directly blown away. Most of his body had been smashed to smithereens. His body, as a god king, was completely useless right now. His body flew out like a meteor. Die! Pretty much at the same time, Yi Shiwen attacked. A sword light tore through the sky and slashed down towards Yi Wuxiang. It was clean, and it was about to kill him right away. Save me! Save me! At this moment, Yi Wuxiang could only stare blankly at the sword chi as he roared in fear. He already felt that this attack might completely kill him. Emperor Tianqi attacked right away. The sword energy swept out, and he wanted to save Yi Wuxiang. You want to save him? No way. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly. His sword energy was even faster, and in an instant, it had already slashed Yi Wuxiang's body. Puchi! Yi Wuxiang, who was left with only half of his body, was chopped into pieces by the sword. All kinds of elixirs and wealth exploded and were grabbed by Yi Shiwen. His flesh and blood were swallowed by the demon beckoning banner. Ah! In the sky, only Yi Wuxiang's screams were left. You actually dare! The Two Rights King was furious and hollered. Although he didn't like Yi Wuxiang very much, this junior indeed had a high status in the clan. However, Yi Wuxiang had killed Yi Wuxiang so quickly. He didn't even have the chance to rescue him. This made him furious again and again. Scoff! Take care of yourself first. Who knew when Yi Shiwen had already charged in front of him? Chapter 2749. Yi Shiwen had already taken action almost at the moment when Yi Wuxiang had been beheaded. However, Yi Shiwen had already taken action before Yi Wuxiang had been beheaded. He was very confident in his sword move. It was enough to behead Yi Wuxiang. So before the Heaven and Earth King could react, he was forced to a dead end by Yi Shiwen. Before his injuries had healed, he was already in front of Yi Shiwen. I'm going to kill you. Die. At this moment, the Heaven and Earth King started to activate the secret technique he created. The two different powers of yin and yang didn't split apart anymore. Instead, they merged together. After splitting apart, the two powers of yin and yang automatically turned into different powers. Then they condensed into a human form. This was one of the external incarnations that he cultivated. Along with his main body, it was equivalent to 3 experts of the same realm attacking at the same time. Although this technique couldn't last for long, it was enough for a short period of time. His combat strength was already at the level of the 10 great god kings. If there were 2 other equally powerful experts, his strength would be enough to make countless people tremble in fear. This was his trump card. He was planning to use it at the crucial moment to kill Yi Shiwen, who didn't know what was going on, who knew that he would be forced to use it at this moment. However, he had no choice. If he didn't use it and Yi Shiwen killed him, then he didn't need to use it anymore. The three of them worked together, and when they attacked, their combat strength increased by 3 times. When they attacked, their strength increased by 3 times. Rumble! This attack pierced through the sky and landed in front of Yi Shiwen. As it was too close, Yi Shiwen couldn't dodge in time. The space wings behind him spread out and wrapped him within. Hong! An intense collision, an attack that was 3 times stronger. The terrifying energy wave caused the sky to collapse. This old fellow actually hid such a trump card. Emperor Tianqi couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. If he rashly clashed with the Heaven and Earth King and used the Yin and Yang avatar at the crucial moment, he would be severely injured and might even die. If it was a one-on-one battle, even if the two forms king relied on the fact that he had lived longer and was more powerful, he would only be slightly stronger than him. He wouldn't think much of it, but if he were to suddenly summon 2 more clones during battle, then everything would be completely different. These old fellows could be at the top of the heaven race for so many years. Not only did they live for a long time, but they also had some terrifying trump cards. In his heart, he actually started to be a bit more vigilant. He actually didn't die. The Two Rights King couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that his offensive had been easily blocked by Yi Shiwen. His attack had been 3 times stronger than the previous one, and the 3 of him had joined forces. Although they couldn't attack like martial arts incarnations, it was still astonishing enough. However, the result was that they couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. Damn it! How could there be such a monster in the human race? Is Qin Feng's incident going to repeat itself? The Heaven and Earth King thought of one person. He was the only invincible existence in the modern times. He was unimaginably terrifying and pressured them so much that they couldn't breathe. He was different from the majority of people who had never personally seen the Qin Emperor. In his era, he had once been suppressed by him alone. As the only monarch-level expert in the entire universe, his words were like a decree. No one in the universe dared to disobey him. Even their heavenly race was the same. His deepest impression was when the Qin Emperor personally came to the Tian clan's lair. Although their lair had a heritage left behind by their predecessors, and they had some methods to contend against existences at the Emperor-King level, they knew very well that they could only barely contend against them. How could a bunch of inanimate objects contend against a living monarch? That was impossible in the first place. If this monarch was willing to pay a certain price, it was indeed enough to wipe them out. Just when everyone thought that they were about to face a calamity, the Qin Emperor left. He did not kill them all. Although they escaped from danger that time, it made him deeply understand the horror of that level of Emperor-King. It was not those people in the myths and legends that he heard when he was young, but a terrible threat that he had to face in real life. Just one person was enough to suppress all their hopes of survival. No one was the opponent of such an expert. It was precisely because of this that the celestial race began to scheme and scheme to seize the opportunity to achieve the Tao. Without an invincible sovereign overseeing things, let alone ruling over the world again, even survival might be the biggest problem. And those exiled seniors were not reliable at all. The Heaven race had tried their best to find the space coordinates of those exiled seniors in the endless space turbulence for so many years, let alone bring them back. That sealed place was still a taboo in their race. So they understood that if they wanted to get rid of this situation, it was only possible to have an invincible emperor among them again. Finally, their plan was about to succeed, but Yi Shiwen just had to interfere. And Yi Shiwen's amazing performance almost reminded him of the time when he faced the Qin Emperor who had not achieved Tao. At that time, he had not achieved Tao, but he was almost invincible. His peers could not even look at him. Some people exclaimed that it was really a kind of sorrow to be born in the same era as him. Moreover, he defied the natural order that no one could break, killed his way into the Kurfürst Road, and finally achieved Tao. Even in the First and Second War of Resistance against the Heavens, he was one of the most amazing people. This feeling made him feel even more terrified, especially the fact that he was also from the human race. It made him feel even more terrified. Could it be possible that he could become another Qin emperor? While he was still lost in his thoughts, Yi Shiwen's counterattack arrived in a flash, and a terrifying fist energy swept out in an instant. Explode! The Yin and Yang King roared, and the Yin attribute doppelganger of the Yin and Yang doppelganger immediately exploded. Rumble! How terrifying would the self-detonation of a 10 great divine kings level expert be? An entire galaxy would be destroyed along with it. If it weren't for the special environment of this battlefield, how would they be able to withstand it? Who knew how many boundless sins would have to be committed? In an instant, the entire world seemed to have lost all sound. After that, endless sounds erupted, accompanied by a violent energy storm that smashed into the shattered spatial cracks and was devoured by the boundless primal chaos. Everyone thought that Yi Shiwen might really be injured this time, but they did not expect that Yi Shiwen did not seem to be injured at all after the smoke and dust dispersed. Although the space wings were damaged, it was obvious that even such a sudden and terrifying explosion could hurt Yi Shiwen. If it were an ordinary person, even if there was a defensive martial instrument to protect him, he would be shocked to death. This kind of shock wave was very difficult to defend against. However, Yi Shiwen was able to withstand it. His physical cultivation was too terrifying. Many people's first reaction was to sigh with emotion. They were almost scared to death by Yi Shiwen. You only have this kind of means. Neither of you can leave today. Yi Shiwen sneered and stretched out his hand. Explode! The Yin and Yang King did not have much time to think and directly detonated the Yang attribute doppelganger in order to stop Yi Shiwen. He did not believe that the explosion of two doppelganger could not do anything to the opponent. There was a somewhat painful expression on his face. The Yin and Yang avatars could not be condensed casually for him. It consumed a lot of his effort. Losing one could be said to hurt his vitality, let alone exploding two at the same time. But as long as he could take down this damned human, everything was worth it. Go! There was no other thought in his mind at once, only the thought of distancing himself from Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's physical body was too terrifying, and it was really disadvantageous to fight him in close combat. He retreated a distance of thousands of miles in order to avoid the aftermath of the explosion of the Yang attribute doppelganger. Want to leave? It's too late now. A big hand suddenly grabbed out of the mushroom cloud of the explosion and directly grabbed towards the Yin and Yang King. His big hand directly slapped down, and it turned into a sky-overturning seal and smashed down. Bang! The Yin and Yang King wanted to escape, but there was no way. He was directly smashed, and a mouthful of old blood spurted out. His body smashed into the ground of the battlefield, and the earth shook. One could imagine how terrifying this blow was. The Yin and Yang King felt as if all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. It was impossible for an ordinary strong attack to hurt him to this extent. Only Yi Shiwen's blow could be so terrifying. At this time, he had completely lost the idea of competing with Yi Shiwen. They were not on the same level at all. Yi Shiwen did not give up. At this time, he actually rushed out of the smoke and rushed over. Yi Shiwen, our celestial race will be absolutely irreconcilable with you. You will face our pursuit for generations to come. The Yin and Yang King roared. Generations? Do you think you still have a chance? After today, all of you are going to die. Yi Shiwen didn't care at all. Don't talk about generations. I am right in front of you. If you have the ability, then come and kill me. Yi Shiwen trampled down with his foot. The vault of heaven was trampled down and collapsed inch by inch in front of everyone. Yi Shiwen, don't even think about being violent. Emperor Tianqi had already pounced over. He had to save the Yin and Yang King. Otherwise, if he was left alone to face Yi Shiwen, the outcome would be unimaginable. Scram! Yi Shiwen slapped and sent Emperor Tianqi flying. Then his foot continued to land. Prung! The Yin and Yang King died. You're tuning into the Warrior Lord YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.